All right, I think I am live. I'm just going to wait a second here to have it pop up on my screen on the right hand side here before I start. So give me a moment and then we'll get started. It's my second ever live stream, so I'm still getting used to how this works. Okay, cool. So I see it. All right, yeah. So, hey everyone, welcome to my second ever official live stream on my channel. I'm super excited for this. What we're going to be doing right now is building a prototype for an awesome agent using n8n and Gemini 2.0 Flash as our model. And so, yeah, I'm just going to have a blast with you for this. It's a continuation of my mini series that I started last week, showing you my entire process for building AI agents. Also, let me switch to me. I meant to do that to start. I'll show you that roadmap in a second here. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to this. In my last video that I posted on this mini series, I showed a bird's eye view of my entire process, and now we get to actually dive into it, starting with building a prototype for our agent with n8n. Now, the first ever official live stream that I did was this big announcement live stream for Bolt.diy, which was called AutoDev back then. That's our open source AI coding assistant. And there were so many announcements to get through there and so many questions from all of you. It ended up being a pretty high pressure live stream, and to say the least. But this time around, I want it to be quite the opposite. I mean, I've literally got my n8n mug here with coffee that I'll be sipping on throughout the live stream. I'm going to pause a lot to chat with you. So really, I want this to be super casual and laid back while still giving you a lot of value, because we are going to build an awesome n8n agent together as a prototype for what I'll be building for this entire mini series here. And so, yeah, I always start off by using a no/low code tool to build a sort of proof of concept for the agent that I am working on. That's what I mean by a prototype. And so that's what we're going to be doing right now, building something quite awesome that I'll showcase in a little bit here. The other thing I wanted to say is I hope you guys are having an awesome end of your year. I know that I am. I'm actually taking some time off pretty soon here, pretty much right after this live stream, actually. So the video that I would usually be publishing tomorrow night is going to be replaced by this live stream. And then I have a super awesome video scheduled for the 1st, which is really going to help you get the start of your year right with AI. So don't miss that. Super exciting video. So yeah, I think we can actually dive into the meat of things here. So first of all, like I mentioned already, I posted the first video of this mini series to my channel already, giving a bird's eye view of my entire process for building AI agents. And so now we get to actually dive into prototyping our agent. That's what we get to do together. So let me actually switch to my screen here and present this. Because this is the kind of roadmap that I covered in my first video for my entire process. And I want to cover a kind of couple of the first steps here just to get us on the same page, and then we can dive into building out our prototype here. So first of all, let me check the chat. Like I promised, I'm gonna be sipping on my coffee. Let me do that. And I'm gonna be reading through the chat. Make this as casual as I can. I liked the last stream that I did for Bolt.diy a lot. But yeah, I definitely want it to be more casual going forward. So yeah, hey everybody. I've seen a lot of comments in the chat already. Welcome from Nigeria and Brazil, Thomas. Cool to have all you guys here. Hey, welcome from Hungary. It's cool to see everyone from around the world. That's actually one of the big reasons that I did this stream 9 o'clock Central Time in the morning, my time, instead of the last one I did 7 o'clock at night, my time, because it just was a terrible time for people from around the world. So yeah, I'm glad that this is working for people around the world. Hey, from Indonesia, welcome to the live stream here. So yeah, let's dive into the roadmap really quickly here, because I want to cover the first couple of things that will get into our prototyping here. So the first step that I'm not really going to cover too much right now is the planning of the agent. And so there's a lot of questions that I covered in my first video just to get yourself with the right frame of what you actually want to build and how you want to go about building it. And then the second step, this is what we are really diving into right now, prototyping your agent with a no/low code tool. And the goal is just to get started very, very fast. And you don't necessarily have to use a no/low code tool. I mean, you can use AI IDEs like Windsurf and Cursor to get started so fast with building your agents with code. But even considering you can use AI to help code so much, I still find tools like n8n and VoiceFlow to make that initial prototype build so much faster. And so that's what we're going to be doing right now with n8n. And so yeah, another big thing here is I don't even focus on the front end or the database yet. And I actually will get into this a bit at the end of the live stream, but to start out what we're going to build initially, we're going to have no front end or database. It's just going to very simply be a workflow within n8n that we chat with within that workflow builder. So yeah, let me exit out of this and go over to the Live Agent Studio, because the other thing that I promised for this stream here is I promised that this agent would be available for you to try right now as we are doing this live stream. So I have this live on the Live Agent Studio. I will even send a message here with the link, studio.ottomator.ai. You can go over to this link right now. Oh, I actually have to sign into chat. Oh no, it works. Okay, I see it come through. All right, nice. All right, so yeah, you can go to studio.ottomator.ai, sign in. You get 100 free tokens to try out all these agents right now. And so you can try this GitHub assistant as we are building it together with n8n. So this is the prototype version. So I call that out specifically. It's not like I built the full thing, brought that in, and then started the mini series. I'm starting out with the prototype here on the studio as well. But this is what we're going to build right now. So you can literally give it a link, like I have a couple of examples right here. You can give it a link to a GitHub repository and ask a question like, hey, can you describe this project for me? And then it'll go and actually do that. So it'll read through the file structure. And you can even say, like, I can ask it a question like, what is being done for CI CD in this repo? And so it'll actually go and get the file structure of the repository, look at specific files to answer my questions. And this is what we're going to be building, which is super, super cool. Because this is really useful if you're really, really technical, or if you're not. Because if you're not technical, as you're starting to get into AI, you're going to be looking at a lot of these repositories, because you need to understand these tools that you're leveraging for yourself or your business. But then if you are very technical and you can understand a lot of the code, it still helps to have an agent that can answer questions and look through the repository super quickly. So yeah, like I asked what's being done for CI/CD, and it got the file structure of the repository, and then it starts referencing all these files that we have. And I can even say like, look at each file here and give me a deep dive. So I can have it do some pretty complex stuff where now it's going to have to go and look at every single file that it referenced here for the CI/CD for this repository and describe each of them to me. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to spit out, but probably something pretty cool here. So yeah, let's give it a second. It's going to take a bit longer here because this is going to be massive. Yeah, look at this massive response here. So yeah. Oh, well, it kind of gave me the wrong answer here because I told it to, yeah, I literally looked at every single file in the repo. So anyway, this isn't quite, this is my fault because I prompted it pretty poorly here. I wanted to look at the CI/CD stuff specifically, but yeah, you can see that like it has access to the entire repository. It can look at it, make observations on the repo, dive into specific files. Like I can say, what are the contents of the .env.example file, and it'll go and actually analyze that file and then tell me what's in it, which is super cool. So yeah, and overall, it's not actually that complicated to build this agent. This is literally what we're going to prototype. Like what I have published right here on the Live Agent Studio is exactly what we're going to build right now. So yeah, there we go. This is our .env.example file. So super cool. All right, so yeah, with that, I'm going to go back to the homepage of the Live Agent Studio, because what we're going to do in this live stream after we actually build up the agent is we're going to make it compatible with the Live Agent Studio. And I have this whole developer guide, which actually, by the way, I should introduce the Live Agent Studio for those of you who haven't seen it. Let me go back to the homepage here. So getting ahead of myself here. The Live Agent Studio is a platform that I have developed as a part of Automator, which is my larger platform. And the Live Agent Studio is a community-driven platform filled with all these AI agents that are all open source. So you can try them out like we just did with the GitHub Assistant. You can try it out, and then you can even view the source code. Like I can click on this right here, and then boom, it brings me to the source code, or I guess the workflow JSON if it is an n8n workflow. And so you can download the agent yourself, run it yourself, learn how to use it. I've got extensive documentation for all of the agents here. And so it's this super valuable place for you to go and find agents that are interesting to you, try them, learn how to implement them. And it's all community driven, which, speaking of community driven, I am actually launching a hackathon competition. So let me go to this right here. Super, super exciting. So a hackathon competition is really just what you call a coding competition. And so what we're doing for the Live Agent Studio here, I launched this on the 25th as a kind of Christmas present to you. It's a hackathon competition with a $5,000 prize pool. And the only requirement for this competition is that you build an AI agent for the Live Agent Studio. And so using that developer guide that I showed just right here, you can learn exactly how to build an agent for the studio. You build this and you submit it. Like really, literally you just go to the submit agent form right here, you submit it, and then boom, you've entered into the hackathon competition and you can win a ton of prizes. So yeah, it's sponsored by VoiceFlow and n8n, two awesome no/low code tools that I use all the time for building AI agents. So they're sponsoring this, they're contributing to the prize pool, and my platform is contributing as well. Super, super exciting way for you to be a part of a community building awesome AI agents, win some prize money, and showcase your AI mastery to the world. And the prizes are pretty exciting. Let me go to this right here. So $5,000 total prize pool. And if you build the best agent overall, you're getting yourself a nice $1,500, which is super cool. So yeah, you guys should all register for this right now. In fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the registration link, copy it, and I'm going to put it in the chat right here. It is totally free to register. Like this is literally just a huge gift to all of you guys, like a big Christmas gift. So yeah, register, build an agent, submit, and win some prizes. It's super cool. So yeah, one thing I'll cover really quickly for the timeline here. And by the way, this relates to what we're doing here, prototyping an agent for n8n, because n8n is one of the beautiful platforms that you can use to build an agent for the competition. And I'm going to be showing in this live stream how to take what we build and make it compatible with the Live Agent Studio so that it can be hosted here like we just saw when I demoed it. So as far as the timeline goes, let me go back into full screen here. We got the registration that's open now until January 8th. And then the competition will officially start and we'll be accepting submissions January 8th through the 22nd. And then me and the Automator team will be doing the initial round of judging, but then we'll put up a bunch of agents on the platform, the Live Agent Studio, for you all to vote on. So you get to be a part of choosing the winners for this competition, which is super, super cool. And we're going to be doing a lot to make sure there isn't any kind of like unfair advantage to people that are bringing in their friends to vote and things like that. So we're taking care of that, but it's going to be a really exciting way to get everyone engaged in this Live Agent Studio, because my goal really is to have this be a central hub of open source agents for us all to learn and grow with AI together. And then finally, I'm going to be doing another live stream on February 1st, announcing the winners in real time, because that's right when the cutoff is for the community voting. And so I get to find out, along with all you guys in real time, who actually wins all of those super exciting prizes here. So that is the hackathon competition. So seriously, go and register for this right now. It takes like 2 seconds to register. And then, yeah, start planning and building your agent right away. Like, I mean, you don't even have to wait until the competition officially starts to start planning what your agent might be. Or maybe you already have something that you've built, so you can just tweak it a bit to make it compatible with the Live Agent Studio and then submit it. And I also have a super helpful video walking through what it looks like to actually build an agent for the Live Agent Studio. And then this entire documentation right here is super comprehensive because I make it so easy to understand everything that goes into making an agent for the studio. Okay, so anyway, enough of that. That is the hackathon. I wanted to spend some time on that because that is just something so exciting going on right now. Yeah, RX3 said, already got some agents ready to go. That is awesome. Yeah, feel free to submit those. I mean, yeah, you don't have to do too much to participate in the competition if you already have some awesome agents. So yeah, actually, let me read through some more of the comments here before we dive into actually prototyping an agent. So I literally got the blank canvas here for n8n because we're going to build up an agent from scratch here. Let's see. Gamby said, less than 8 minutes into this live stream and 2.5 minutes of ads. Okay, I'm really sorry about that. So a couple people mentioned in my last stream that there was a lot of ads. So I specifically set the setting to have the most or the minimal ads for the live stream. So I don't really know why it's doing that much. I'm really sorry about that. I don't think I can edit it in real time. Let's see if I can delay ads. Okay, I clicked the button to delay ads for 10 minutes. I guess I can do that. So I'm going to keep doing that if I need to. I'm sorry that there are too many ads. Sometimes I don't appreciate YouTube has so many settings that are kind of hard to mess with. So I'll do my best, especially going forward too. So thank you for mentioning that. And then Razvin said, can we clone a live agent repo without using a token? Yes, you can. So you have to use tokens to try the agents on the live agent studio. Let me go back to this. So all these agents here, you have to use a token to try it here. But that's mostly just because I'm paying for the infrastructure and the LLM costs, and so I have to have some way to protect from people just using it way too much and charging me out the wazoo. But you don't even have to use a token to view the source and download the agent for yourself. So you're only using tokens, which I give 100 of them for free when you sign up, but you're only using these to actually try the agent, and then you can download it for free. So that's super important to keep in mind. Yeah, Nexus says, excited to see Gemini 2 in action for custom agents. And yes, I am as well. I mean, it works so well. Just the speed at which it can process my prompts is super important, especially because with this GitHub agent, a lot of times it has to process so many files when it's looking at the entire file structure for a repo. So yeah, let's dive into actually building this out. And then I'll do a little bit more time for Q&A in a little bit here. So I've got my comments on the left-hand side here, checking out all of what you guys are saying in the live stream. And then in my centered monitor here, I have n8n, which is where we're going to be building our workflow. And then on the right-hand side, I have the fully built-out workflow here for my reference, because as much as I want to build this from scratch with you, I still want to not stumble over my nodes as I'm setting everything up. And so I have a reference point here just to make sure I don't trip up on anything, because I want this to be a smooth process as I'm building this with you while still doing it from scratch. So this is kind of the optimal setup that I've got here. So yeah, with that, we can actually get started here. So yeah, for those of you who are unfamiliar with n8n, I have a ton of videos on my channel already that I'd recommend checking out. I don't want to start from scratch explaining n8n and triggers and nodes and all of that, because I want to really provide a lot of value by actually having the time, giving myself the time to build out a full agent here. So we are starting from scratch. n8n is a pretty straightforward and intuitive platform, so it should come together pretty quickly for you, even if you're not familiar. But yeah, we are going to just dive right in here. So the first thing is we have to set up a trigger for our workflow. And because this is a prototype of an agent, I do not care about anything besides being able to chat with it right here in the workflow builder. And the way that you do that is you select the on chat message trigger. And so what this does here is it gives me this chat button now. So instead of that test workflow button that we had before, let me actually adjust. Let me do this quickly here. I'm going to adjust my screen size. Hopefully this works in real time. I'm going to adjust my screen size so you can see the full screen here. Yeah, all right, there we go. So when chat message received, it gives me this chat window here where I can now talk to my agent. So I can say hi, and then obviously this isn't going to do anything yet because we just have the trigger. But now I have this input, the hi, that's going to come into whatever I have for the rest of my workflow. And the big core component of this workflow is going to be this node called the agent node, the AI agent. This is one of my favorite parts of n8n, the AI agent node, because it bakes in so much in one, in this tiny little node right here. We've got the chat model that we can attach, the memory, the conversation history, and then also all the tools that we'll be adding to actually do things with GitHub. Super cool. So for the chat model here, I'm going to select Google Gemini chat model because, as promised, we're going to be using Gemini 2.0 Flash. And so for the credentials here, I'll show how to set that up in a second. And then for the model, I want to use Gemini 2.0 Flash. So I have to scroll through all the 1.0s that we have here. I'm not going to use the thinking one right now, even though that'd be pretty cool. This is Gemini's version of 01, so to speak, where the model actually has chain of thought and reasons with itself before it gives a response, which is super cool. But I'm just going to use the regular 2.0 Flash, experimental right now. And then for the credentials, let me create a new credential just to show you what it looks like. All you have to do is leave the host as the same, and then for the API key, you just get this from the Google admin console. And so I'll actually show that quick right here. Just so that, because credentials are one of the trickier parts of n8n, so I want to spend at least a little bit of time showing you how to get these credentials. And so I have a link right here that I will post. Actually, I won't post it in the chat. I'll just use it here. Oh, that's wrong format. Sorry about that. All right, let me copy this. Boom, boom. Okay, so if you go to your Google AI Studio and you go to your plan information for your API, you have this project right here for Gemini API. If you click on this, so you just go to aistudio.google.com/plan_information. And then you go and click on open in new window. This will bring you to the Google Cloud console where you can create a new API key. And this is what you use to use Gemini 2.0 Flash, which, by the way, with Gemini 2.0 Flash, you get 1,500 requests per day completely for free. It's just an amazing model overall, and it's free to use. It's just a huge win, which is why I want to use it for this prototype here. So you just click on API key, and it'll make this brand new API key. I'm going to close out of this. Well, okay, I guess it made the key. So I'm going to quickly delete this because I'm literally showing my API key. So let me click on this and delete. But that's how easy it is to make an API key to use Flash. So yep, delete credential. I don't want you guys to actually be able to use that because then you're going to blow through my 1,500 requests for Gemini. So I deleted that, but I showed you how easy it is to make it. And then going back over to n8n here, we have our chat model fully set up. So the next thing that we want to do is set up our memory. And again, for prototyping, don't even focus on the database yet. So for the memory, I'm actually just going to use a windowed buffer memory. Super, super easy because this is going to use local storage on my machine hosting n8n to store all the conversation history, so I don't even have to deal with a SQL database yet or anything like that. Super, super easy. So yeah, with that, let me actually pause quick and just answer any questions that are in the chat. So let me scroll through this quick. I got to keep up with my promises and answer all the questions and make this casual. So yeah, let me scroll through a bit here. Kevin asked, what does n8n cost? And then Razvin said, if you self-host, it is free. And I have a good tutorial on how to set it up. So yes, that is true. You can, n8n is open source. You can literally download it and then host it yourself with Docker, with NPM. And really the only thing you have to pay for then is the machine that you are using to host it. So if you use DigitalOcean or AWS or something like that for that cloud instance to host n8n, you're paying for that. But everything else is completely free, which is one of the big reasons that I love n8n over other platforms like Zapier or Make.com. So yeah, super awesome. Let's see. Prompt for system AI. Is it important or do we just put anything for that? Yeah, so the system prompt is actually very, very important. And I'm going to get into that a little bit for this right here. So actually I can show you guys right now. If I click into my AI agent, and I go to add option, I can add a system message here. And I actually am going to be doing this in a second here because this is what gives your agent an idea of what it's supposed to do and the behavior that you expect from it. And so this is where we'll tell it like you are a GitHub expert who analyzes repositories to answer questions over the files or something like that. Like that sets the stage for the agent to properly understand how to handle the prompts that are coming in from the user. So yeah, the system prompt is very, very important and we will get to that. So yeah, let me keep scrolling down. Let's see. Matt asked, can you just make a quick example of what you can do without explaining it? Could you maybe, oh, okay, yeah. So at the start of the live stream, maybe you joined a little late. I did actually give an example of what it can do. Because let me go out of full screen here and go back over. Right now, you can literally go to studio.ottomator.ai. Like the link is right here, studio.ottomator.ai, and you can try out this agent right now. You can put the agent to work after you sign up and get your free tokens, and you can try it out right now. And you can ask it questions about any GitHub repository. You just have to give a link to the agent, and then you can ask it any questions, and it'll actually like look at the file structure for the repo, analyze specific files. It'll get you the answer that you're looking for. So that's what the agent does. And I showed that at the start of the live stream. So I hope that helps. Arul asked, what is the best framework for building agents, as in the easiest? So in my mind, n8n is the easiest overall. That's why I'm using it right now. And it's free to use, open source, super awesome. VoiceFlow is another really good option if you want a paid platform that does a lot more for you. Also, sorry, I think the ad might have went off, so I'm going to delay the ads again. I guess I'm going to have to keep clicking that button, but that's all good. Yeah, and then as far as like if you want to actually code your agent, my recommendation would be using Pydantic AI. It is a phenomenal Python framework for coding your AI agents very, very easily. They have super good documentation, and they do a lot of abstraction, so like making it easier to code AI agents while still giving you all of the customization and power that you would hope for when you are actually coding an agent instead of using a no-code tool. So that'd be my recommendation. Yeah. So yeah, next question. I like the UI for n8n. Does that work for mapping out multi-agent workflows as well? Yes, you can certainly do multi-agent workflows within n8n because you can take this agent node and you can have multiple of them. So if you have something like a orchestrator agent that decides which agent to give the work to based on which one's the expert at what, like you can set all that up in n8n very easily. Kind of like you can do in Flowise. Flowise is another no/low code agent builder that's built right on top of LangChain, and they have like all these functionalities for building like supervisor agents and orchestration agents and things like that, and you can do all that in n8n as well for sure. So yeah. Yeah, Matt said, thanks, man. Sorry, I just joined. Yeah, you're totally good. I hope that quick explanation helped you understand what this agent can do. So yeah, Zaroon asked, what about Relevance AI? You know, I've heard of Relevance AI, but I haven't actually used it before. If I had the time to try out every single AI agent framework and tool, I definitely would, because there's so many amazing ones out there, and I have heard good things about Relevance. I just haven't gotten a chance to try it. Yeah, RX3 said, gotta set up an automation to delay ads. I guess I do. I think when I kick off the live stream, I can completely turn off ads. I'll have to look into that. I might just do that, honestly. So, yeah. All right, one more question, and then I will continue on here. So last one, if adding LangChain or LangGraph, where would they be attached into? So typically when I use these frameworks like LangGraph, I'll implement them once I'm actually custom coding my agent. So in that roadmap that I showed, I always start by prototyping my agent with something like n8n, and then I'll get into custom coding my agent, which by the way, you don't always have to go and quote unquote graduate from no code to coding. But when you do and you start coding your agent, that is when you would use something like LangGraph. So yeah. Let me continue on here. So a lot of questions, but this is good. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to still build something here, but also give a ton of time for questions. So I think this is good here. So yeah, we have our agent here, and we could actually like talk to it already. So like I can save this here and go into the chat window here, and I can say like, hello, how are you? And we should actually get a response from the agent. There we go. Boom. So we have an agent that we can actually talk to. It just can't really do anything for us at this point, but it is using Gemini 2.0 Flash, and we can have a conversation with it here. The chat memory is working. I can say, what did I just say? And it should repeat to me, yep, you just said, hello, how are you? Perfect. Okay, so chat memory is working, the model's working. Now we can continue adding on some of the tools to actually have it do cool things with GitHub. And so the first thing that I actually want to do is I want to add in a system prompt as promised. So I'm going to go back into our tools agent node right here. I already added the option for the system message, and now I'm going to paste this in. So I'm going to go into my editor here, and I already have this paste or copied from the example workflow that I have on my right monitor here, because I don't want to spend the 5 minutes to type this from scratch with you. But essentially what I do is I set the stage like I already kind of spoke about. So you're a coding expert with access to GitHub. You can assist users answering questions about repos. And then I also give it some instructions to like make sure you actually have the link to the repository before you try to do anything, just to avoid any hallucinations there. And then the way that I make sure that the agent can continuously remember which repository we're actually talking about is I have it start its answer with the repo link and then give the answer so that it's constantly available in the conversation memory what repo we're actually looking at. And that's a little jank, but that's why we're prototyping here. We don't really care about little details like this at first. Maybe later when we make our full production ready agent, there would be a separate place to input the GitHub link, and then that'd be used in the conversation. But right now, we're just kind of baking it right in the conversation, and we're totally good with that. That works for now as we're doing our prototype. So now we have this system message that sets the stage for our agent to understand how to use all the tools that we're going to hook up now. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to add a tool to get the file structure of a repository. So right now, if I were to ask it, let me actually get a link here. So I have this link to bolt.diy, which is our open source AI coding assistant. And I'm going to ask it a question about that. And right now, it is going to completely fail. Obviously, it doesn't have any information on how to actually get something from GitHub. So I'll paste this in, I'll say, describe this repo. And it's going to do nothing. It doesn't have the right answer here. So this repository appears to be related to a project called Bolt by StackBlitz Lab. So at this point, it's just grabbing whatever information it can from the URL, not giving me an answer that is actually useful. So now it is our job to give it the tools so it can actually go out to GitHub and pull the file structure of the repo, look at individual files, and be able to answer that kind of question. Like maybe to describe the project, we want it to look at the README that we have, which is this file right here that is at the start of the repo where we describe everything. Like this gives the agent everything it needs to quickly tell us what the project is about. And so let's go back and let's add a tool. So what we want to do right here for our tool is we want to call an n8n workflow. There are no GitHub tools here. So we don't have anything where we can directly attach a node like we could with Gmail. So we have to make a custom n8n workflow. It's going to be kind of like a sub workflow that'll just live right down here that the agent will call to get the information that it needs from a GitHub repo. So I'm going to add this right here, call n8n workflow. And I'm going to rename this here to call get repo structure tool. So this is the name of our tool. And then this name right here is actually given to the large language model. So this is just the name of our node. And then this is the name that tells the agent, hey, here's this tool that you have. It's called blah. And this is what you can use to do this thing. So we give it the name, and I can just say get repo structure. And then the description, this is where we tell it to call this tool to get the entire structure of a GitHub repo given the URL of the repo. And so these two pieces of information, this is what is given to the model for it to know when and how to use this tool. And then for the workflow here, I'm actually going to do a little bit of fancy syntax here to reference the current ID of the workflow that I am in. So this workflow is going to be right within here. It's not going to be a separate n8n workflow that it has to call. It's going to basically call itself. And then we're going to use the trigger execute workflow right here to set up our tool. And so when it decides to call this tool and it calls itself, it calls its own ID for the workflow, that is going to trigger this right here. So we're going to kind of have two separate parts to our agent. We're going to have the chat part that uses the agent, and then the tools part, which is going to be triggered using this trigger right here, which is called from this node right here. So I hope that makes sense how that works. You can also set up an entirely separate n8n workflow if you want to have your tool completely separate from your agent, and then you just reference the ID of that workflow. Which, by the way that you get that is just this text right here. So n8n.yourdomain/workflow/ and then this is the ID right here. So that's how you get the ID. You can see that matches exactly with what we see right here with the preview of the workflow ID. So there you go, boom, now we have that set up. And it is time to define the parameters that we want for our tool. So right now, when we call the get repo structure, we're not telling it what to actually give to this tool, but we obviously have to give it the URL of the GitHub repository that we want to get the repo structure for. And so the way that we do that is, let me look at my example here. So the field to return, we'll get to this in a second here, but I'm just going to say structure. And then for the extra workflow inputs, I'm going to add a value. And first of all, we need the session ID. And that is going to be the session ID that we get from our chat node right here. So we get the session ID. And then, okay, so then specify input schema. So I'm going to check this at the bottom. This is where we define what we want the model to give as parameters to our tool. So you can, if you're familiar with coding up your agents in Python, this is basically the parameters for the tool function that you want to specify right here. And so what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to copy the JSON that I have from my example. It's just the repository URL. This is the only piece of information that we need the agent to give to this function, because with that, it's now able to pull the entire structure of the repository right here. And then we give a little description of what this value actually represents. So again, this entire node that we're setting up right here is just defining for the large language model when and how to use this function. We say, hey, this is the name of the function, this is when you call it, and then here is the argument that you have to give it. You have to specify the repository URL here. And so now when we call this tool, this trigger is going to get called, and it's going to have the repository URL as the input parameter. So yeah, I think with that, let me pause and see if there are any questions. That's kind of like, honestly, the most complicated part of setting up this entire agent is just getting to that point where we have an understanding of how this node is actually used to invoke a tool and how we initially set up that tool. And then the rest of this is just going to be a walk in the park, because it's actually a pretty simple workflow overall to make this tool happen. So yeah, let me pause and then scroll up and see if there are any questions here. Your n8n expert was very cool, by the way. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, let me keep scrolling. Does agent node n8n have MCP for multiple data sources? So the model context protocol from Claude is not implemented in the n8n agent node, but essentially these tools that you can add onto the agent do the same thing. I mean, the whole point of the model context protocol is you can define these little functions that do something with the service, like it'll send a message in Slack or pull a Gmail email. And then you attach those into Claude Desktop so that agent there, your Claude agent, has access to those tools. And essentially that's what we're doing right here with the tools node, is we are creating this agent like you would have Claude and Claude Desktop, and then attaching all these tools here just like you would have those different servers for MCP. So I hope that makes sense. How can memory be improved? Semantic and long-term memory. That is a good question. I am actually going to dive into that later on in this series. It's a bit longer to answer that question, so I'll save that one, but that is a good question. I will definitely be diving into that throughout this series. Next question, LangGraph or Pydantic AI? Okay, I'm actually really glad that you asked this question, because my answer is both. They actually work very, very well together, because Pydantic AI is a framework to build AI agents. And then LangGraph is more of a framework to orchestrate AI agents, because you can have these different parts of your workflow that call different agents. You have human in the loop, so like before an agent takes a specific action, you can have human approval, all these different tools to manage agents in a workflow. And so they actually work very, very well together. The original goal of LangGraph was actually to work with LangChain, and LangChain is more similar to Pydantic AI because it is also a framework to build AI agents. But even the founder of LangChain himself, Harrison Chase, he'll tell you that LangChain is a little bit of a mess. And so Pydantic AI is a really good replacement while still leveraging LangGraph, because LangGraph is incredible and kind of their next evolution for their whole platform. So I hope that makes sense. Matt said, have you looked at the leak system prompts? Would you steal them? I assume you're talking about leak system prompts for AI coding assistants. Like I think the prompt for V0 was leaked. V0 is an AI coding assistant from Vercel that helps you create front-end Next.js components and React components. I've looked at it a little bit. There's definitely a lot to learn from how people set up their system prompts, because there's so much that goes into describing exactly how the LLM should operate and giving it examples for what it should output and things like that. There's a lot to learn from them. Also, the Apple Intelligence prompt was leaked. I don't know if you guys know that. Super fascinating because it's actually like a little silly. The entire prompt, like there's a part of the Apple Intelligence prompt that literally says do not hallucinate. Like they just told the LLM, please don't hallucinate. Like they're just begging to the LLM, don't make stuff up. It's kind of silly. Like it's a super professional system and their prompt just looks like any one of us made it, which is super funny. So yeah, Carl said, thanks for your great content. Appreciate it, Carl. Rita said, will you show how to use Postgres for the AI agent memory? We are going to get into that. That's going to be a part of this live stream. I'm going to show how to use Postgres and specifically with Supabase. So we will definitely get there. What else do we got? John said, should we start trying to add the length of the system prompt plus the tool names and descriptions? Plus the length of the user's question. I'm a little confused by the question because the tool names and descriptions are actually put into the system prompt, basically under the hood. So when I define right here, like, hey, this is my tool to get the structure of a repository, here's how to use it or when to use it, and then here's the parameters that I need. All of this is essentially baked into the system prompt. So we have what I wrote right here explicitly for the system prompt, and then all that other stuff here is basically built on top of it to give the LLM the context that it needs to use these tools. So I'm not quite sure I follow your question. Maybe you could expand on that. Yeah, so let's see. Do I have a video on installing n8n in local? I don't actually. However, if you just Google installing n8n on DigitalOcean, they have this insanely clear documentation for how to do that. DigitalOcean is my recommended platform for installing n8n. So I would definitely check that out. I didn't make a video on that specifically just because of how easy the documentation makes it that I didn't really feel worth it. Like I wouldn't be providing enough value in making that video just because the documentation is so clear. There's also a lot of other YouTubers that have made that video, so you could check that out if you want. Like if you Google AI, or not Google, but if you go into YouTube and search AI workshop, n8n local install, he's got an awesome video that I'd recommend checking out. Yeah. Let's see. What is the best memory for AI agents? Postgres/Redis, or is window buffer memory enough? So window buffer memory, what I'm using right here for my prototype, is not enough. This is enough for a prototype, but when you actually build on an agent for production, you're going to want to use Postgres or Redis. I typically just use Postgres with Supabase myself, and I'll show that later on as well in the stream here. But yeah, definitely Redis is a good option as well, because that's more of like a cache platform versus a permanent database, but it's super fast and it's good to use as well for something that can be more ephemeral, like chat history, for just like a temporary conversation. So yeah, that'd be my recommendation there. Hey Juan, welcome from Spain. Super cool that you are here. Let's see, how can call get repo structure tool know which trigger to execute? Yeah, so that's going off of the workflow ID. So when I specify the workflow ID of this current workflow, this is kind of like that dynamic syntax to get the ID of the current workflow. It knows based on that to call this trigger right here, the execute workflow trigger. And then if I had a separate n8n workflow, all I'd have to do is change this ID to the ID of that n8n workflow, and then it would call the execute workflow trigger over there. So I hope that makes sense. That's how these things are tied together. So yeah, let me keep scrolling here. Can you make the input to an agent workflow a picture? Yes, you can. I'm not going to cover this right now because this agent's going to be focused just on GitHub repositories, but you can do image recognition within agents in n8n. Yeah. Can we have multiple sub workflow triggers or limited to one? So yes, you can call, well, actually, I think I understand your question. You're saying, could I have multiple execute workflow triggers within just this workflow? The answer is no. You can only have one execute workflow trigger. But as you're about to see when I set up my two tools here, one to get the structure of a repo and one to analyze a specific file, I have a way to get around this where you have one execute workflow trigger, but it can actually branch off into the different tools that we have. And that's going to be using an extra workflow input here where I'm basically going to specify which tool I actually want to go down the route of in this sub workflow here. So we'll get to that in a second here. Let's see, really like Pydantic AI, but struggling to integrate it with n8n workflows. Any tips? Big follower and fan, by the way. Well, first of all, thank you very much. And that is a good question. So when I use a coding framework like Pydantic AI or LangChain or Llama Index, whatever, and I'm integrating it with n8n, the way that I always do it is I use n8n for my agent tools. So I'll use something like Pydantic AI to set up all of the agent logic and the chat memory and the system prompt and all of that. And then I'll use n8n. Basically what I'll do is I'll take my n8n workflows and I'll turn them into webhooks. So if I search for the webhook trigger here, you'll see that, I'll just click this here. The webhook trigger is different than these two triggers because it's a way to actually turn your workflow into an API endpoint. So this is an endpoint that I can now call that's going to invoke the rest of my workflow. And so that is how I set up my n8n tools to be API endpoints that I can call as a tool within Pydantic AI. So within Pydantic AI, I basically set up this super simple function that takes in any parameters that you need, like the repository URL, for example. And then that function, its sole job is just to invoke the webhook for the n8n tool. So all the logic is still over in the n8n workflow, but I'm calling it from Pydantic. And that's something that I think I'll definitely be showing throughout this mini series as well, because there's definitely a time and place to use n8n, even when you have everything coded up in Pydantic AI and you're building out your production agent. So I hope that makes sense. I always use webhook n8n workflows for tools for my Pydantic AI agents. And I even have a video on my channel where I do that, not with Pydantic AI, but with LangChain, because Pydantic AI wasn't even released when I made that video, but I show an example. I don't know if I want to go and try to find that video right now, but I have a video on my channel where I use LangChain to build out my agent, and then I use n8n for the tools. So yeah, I hope that helps. Let's see here. Any other questions? Yeah, Rule said, I tried n8n a while back, not finding it the best fit for my project. Yeah, I mean, it's all up to personal preference. Like if you're a very technical person and you understand very easily how to build your agents with code, maybe n8n isn't always going to be the best. But yeah, for me, I still find it useful, especially for agent tools like I was just saying and for prototyping. But I totally get you that like, if you have a more complex use case, like you're saying with working in your code bases, yeah, maybe it isn't going to be the most helpful, but it still could be. It's just, yeah, kind of comes up to personal preference here. Will recording of this live be available? Yes, it will be. Definitely will be. What else do we got here? What are we covering today? This is the setup in screen, or is there coming more? So what we're building right now is a prototype for an AI agent that can consume an entire GitHub repository. And it'll be able to answer questions over specific files and the general structure of the repo overall. So that's what we're building right now. It's a prototype with n8n as a part of a mini series that I started where I am building an entire AI agent from scratch, going through my entire process. So that's what's going on right here. Kamara asks, will this work for private Git repos as well? This will not. This is limited to only public repositories, which, I mean, in my mind is okay because the goal here is to, you find some open source repo that you want to understand and learn how to implement for yourself. That is going to be public. So you can just paste that URL into this agent and it'll help you understand that repo. And you can ask questions about that repo. So just public repos. Okay, so Hungry List, thanks for the live session. You're welcome. Really interesting. How do you make your agents call for other agents? Is it in the system prompt or in the tools? So very good question. When you have a primary agent that you want to invoke sub-agents, usually you'll make those sub-agents as a tool. And so you'd have another workflow here that would do something specific with another agent. Like maybe you have some agent that is an expert at some specific part of understanding GitHub repositories. And so you'd have that agent called in this sub workflow here, and then your primary agent would have a tool attached to call that agent. And you would describe in the description right here what this sub agent is good at doing and when you would call it. So yeah, I generally set those up as tools there. Okay, Blue Google said Valkey, a Redis fork is greater than Redis. Yeah, I could get behind that. Redis, it's kind of unfortunate. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Redis is an in-memory cache platform. So it's a way, I mean, caching is just super important with software development overall. It's this wonderful platform that started out as open source, and then they went commercial. So they basically forked their own repo and made it a private version that they continued to develop out, and then they just left the open source Redis hanging forever, which is kind of sad. But then Valkey is a project that took Redis and continue to develop it, focusing still on open source, which is super cool. And you all know that I'm a huge fan of open source with bolt.diy and all the agents that I have open source in the Live Agent Studio, and so I definitely respect Valkey for that. Yeah, so Timers asked, I made my own AI, how can I import that into this? Maybe you can expand on your question a bit, like did you actually build your own generative AI model? That'd be super cool, but yeah, let me know a bit more. John said that answers my question perfectly. Okay, awesome. I'm glad that that did. I'm mostly using local models with much smaller context lengths. So the context length of the model needs to be longer than all of the tools added. That is correct. Yep. So if you have a model that can accept 4,000 tokens for its window, but then your system prompt is also 4,000 tokens, then you wouldn't be able to add any tools because that also needs to be included in the context window, and so that would then go over the limit of 4,000. So yes, you have that completely right. Is there a way to get an agent to log in using an auth0 pop-up? That's a good question. I think what you're getting at is the idea of authorization. So if you build an agent that like does something with someone's Gmail, for example, that agent needs to have some way to actually access that user's Gmail. And typically the way that you would do that is you would send the user an OAuth 2 authorization link when the agent needs to use their Gmail. Then the user would have to click on that, authorize the agent, and then the agent could continue with the action that it was going to do in Gmail. I think that answers your question. Maybe you could expand on that as well. But yeah, that is a good question because that's something super important in general with building agents is the whole idea of authorization. And that's something that I'm actually still working on for the Live Agent Studio here. So as you can see, all of these agents that I have right now, none of them actually require user authorization. Like it's not using someone's Slack or using someone's Gmail because that actually takes the agent to a whole new level where it has to manage credentials for these users' services as it's doing these actions for them. And that is something I'm actually looking at implementing. But it's a bit challenging. And so, yeah, that's kind of like to come soon, but that's super important. A lot of agents, when you have multiple users using it, it has to be able to handle that kind of authorization. So yeah, definitely a good question here. So yeah, let me scroll down. Also, let me fix my lighting a little bit here. There we go. All right, so let me scroll down a bit. For local vector storage, do you recommend Supabase or is Quadrant also a good way of achieving good RAG outputs? So both are good. I typically go with Supabase though. It's not better than Quadrant, maybe equivalent. But it's just really nice because Supabase, when you use PG Vector for RAG, you also have your SQL database. You can do everything else with Supabase, like your chat memory as well, that we'll get to, while still using PG Vector for RAG. So you just keep everything on one platform, which is why I typically recommend using Supabase instead of Quadrant, even though, yeah, like I said, Quadrant is great. Also, let me take a quick coffee break here. A lot of questions coming in. I really appreciate it, guys. I might have to move on to the rest of this workflow in a little bit here, though. Rita said, hi, Cole, for local vector storage, do you recommend... oh, no, that's that's the same question. I scrolled back up a little bit. All right. Harsh said, hi, Cole, love your content. Thank you very, very much. What is your view on production use of locally hosted LLMs? I always advocate for self-hosted due to privacy issues of SaaS solutions. So very good question. And the answer is it just depends a lot on the use case. I mean, there are a ton of use cases, even for big enterprises in production, where it's okay to go with a cloud, a large language model, and you don't have issues of data privacy. Most of the time, if you have a front-facing agent, like a customer support agent, for example, where its knowledge base is your e-commerce store. Let's say it's an e-commerce site. Like all the data there is public. And so, oops. Sorry, I clicked on the resume. I had to click on the resume ad break again. Yeah, so where was I? Yeah. So like in that case, if it's like a customer facing bot where all of the knowledge is not private, a lot of times it actually makes sense to use cloud LLMs because you don't have an issue of data privacy. But if it's some internal application that is like an AI agent that helps you with revenue reports or something like that, like at that point you have a ton of sensitive data, you definitely want to use local LLMs. And even if that's a SaaS where you help other businesses with these agents for revenue reporting, yeah, like they're not going to want their data going out to the cloud. And so you would want to have local LLMs for that as well. So I hope that makes sense. It really comes down to just thinking about like, does the data that my agent has for its knowledge base or what it goes and fetches with tools, does that have to be private or not? Wow, okay, there are so many questions. Okay, what I'm going to do right now, I appreciate all of your questions. I'm going to continue for now building out this agent, and then I'll get back to more questions because I want to make sure that I'm still chatting with all you, but then also still delivering value with this agent. So let me continue with that here. So next up, what we want to do, we have this tool that is going to be triggered now, but it's not going to actually do anything. In fact, I can even test this here. I'm going to restart the conversation. Well, actually, let me copy this here. I'm going to restart the conversation. I'm going to paste this here. Oh, wow, that did not work. I don't know why it pasted the wrong thing. Let me copy this link to the repo and go back here. All right, so I'm going to say, describe this repo. And at this point, boom, there we go. So it executed the tool. It just didn't get anything back because this doesn't do anything yet. But you can see that it processed the response, called this. So now we can set up the rest of our workflow here to actually do something with GitHub. And so what I'm going to do here, first of all, is I'm going to do a little bit of coding. So I promise that n8n is no/low code, but the low code is important. There is a bit of a coding component to this agent right here. So I'm going to run some JavaScript code, and you'll see the purpose of that in a second here. So let me zoom out a little bit and add in the code. Actually, hold on. Why is that not working? I literally clicked on the plus and then clicked on JavaScript, and it's not adding it in. Let me try refreshing here. JS, come on, add it in. There we go. Okay, I have no idea why that didn't work. That was kind of scary. It literally wouldn't let me add in a node. All right, there we go. So I added in this node, and then here is my function right here. So I'm not going to explain this in detail here, especially because I've already went so long with questions, which is awesome, by the way. I'm just saying I want to go through this a little quickly. But essentially, I get this repository URL as the parameter for the tool call. And I'm passing this repository URL, this is the syntax to get the URL, into this function right here that is going to use a regular expression. It's just a fancy way to extract specific text from a string. And what I want to extract is the organization and the repo for the GitHub URL that I'm giving it. So if I go back to this repository link right here, you can see that the organization is stackblitz-labs, and then the repository name is bolt.diy. And I want to separate those things out because that's what I'm going to use with the GitHub API to make the calls to actually get the file structure and read specific files from the repository. So that's what this fancy JavaScript does. Yeah, so I could explain this a little bit more, but the regex, I mean, I just got this from Claude. I'm going to be totally honest. I didn't come up with this regular expression myself. AI is actually very good at making these super complicated regular expressions. And so this entire function I actually got from Claude. So that's a huge tip for you is like, if you're not super familiar with coding, but it becomes obvious that you have to have a little bit of a code snippet in your n8n workflows, just use Claude or use o1, whatever model, and have it write that code for you. And so that's what I did for this. which was super helpful. So now I have the organization and I have the repo name as well. So now I can actually add in the HTTP request here. So if I type in HTTP, I can make a request over the internet now, and I'm going to use the GitHub API to do that. So I'm going to enter an expression here. And so what I'm doing here is I'm crafting a URL. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit here just so you can see this. I'm crafting a URL using the GitHub API. And the syntax for this is /repos/ the organization that I just pulled out of the URL / the repo, which I also just pulled out of the URL, and then /git/ tree/ main. So I'm going off of the main branch here. I'm assuming that the repository has a main branch, not master or not anything else. And so it's kind of a little bit of assumption here, but again, it's just a prototype, so that's totally okay. So I'm getting that. And then now what I want to do is actually add authentication here. So I'm going to give a predefined credential type, and I can select GitHub for my credential, the GitHub API. And all I have to do for my credentials here is give my user and my access token. So this is your username and then your access token. And the way that you get your GitHub access token, by the way, for all credentials with n8n, they always have very good documentation for how to get that specific credential. So you just go to the n8n documentation page here, and it'll tell you exactly how to get your API access token. So you just click on this link right here, and then boom, you have your credentials. It's so easy. I can even show that really quickly here. If I go to my settings and I go down to, where was it? Developer settings, and click on personal access tokens. I'm not going to go to it right here because you'll see all my tokens, but you'll just go to the tokens classic, or you can do fine grain if you want. So you're only allowing the token to do specific things in GitHub. But you can create your token here, super easy, and then you just paste that into here. So that's how you create your GitHub authentication. Super simple. And then for this GET request, there's actually no parameters. Like, it's this basic because this is the API that's going to get all of the files within the main branch here. Super easy. And so now what I can do is add another code block here to actually format everything. Because what the response that I get from this request, and I'll show an example run in a second here. The response that I get from this request is actually a bunch of JSON. Like, it's super complicated. I want to format it in a nice way for the large language model so that it can actually understand what's given to me. I mean, LLMs can understand JSON pretty well, but it still helps to, since it's a natural language model, to structure it as natural language. I find that it always understands that better than JSON, even though large language models are very impressive with how much they can take in a bunch of jumbled JSON and understand that as well. So I'm going to go back into this code block here. And then the JavaScript, again, I just use Claude for this function, but it's super basic overall. So I take in everything that I got from my request, and then there's this tree attribute of the JSON response from the GitHub API. And this tree, this gives me all of the files and folders. And so I just create this structure with a simple filter and map. So I exclude specific folders, which shouldn't be in a GitHub repo anyway. Like, if you commit your node modules, you're definitely making a mistake, but it excludes these just in case. And then it maps all of the items. So it's either going to be a folder or a file. And I'll show what this output looks like in a little bit, but this is just the way to do that. And yeah, then we're pretty good here. So the other thing that I'll say is that what the value that it returns is structure. So this is the key name for the output of this JavaScript node. And that matches with this value right here. So I said that I'm just going to set this to structure and I'll come back to it. Now I'm coming back to it. This is the field to return. So I am telling the large language model that the response that I get from calling the tool is going to be within the field called structure. And sure enough, that matches with what I have right here, structure. So I hope that makes sense. And so now we actually have this full tool. So I'm going to save it. And I'm going to, I'll rate n8n later. I've already done that. I'm going to copy the URL again, go back into full screen. I should be going into full screen as much as I can because it probably just makes it easier to see. And I'm going to paste in this. I'm going to say, I'll just say what are some of the files in this repo. I hope it doesn't spit out literally everything to me. But yeah, let's make sure this works. And it might fail the first time. Maybe I messed up a little bit. Oh no, it didn't. It actually worked perfectly. All right, first try, we got it. Like, even though I'm using a template on my right monitor here, I still thought that I'd mess up something, but it actually worked perfectly. And so yeah, you can see that using the GitHub URL, like I said, it starts its messages with that. But here are the files in the repo. And it didn't give me all the files. It looks like it just gave me the ones that are at the root of the repo. But that's totally okay, because we can see that this is definitely working. And if I go to the executions here, I can take a look at my tool execution. So if I go into the editor, it's kind of interesting. I wish n8n did this a little bit differently, but when I do my example run, you can see all the green around the boxes here. Like, it's showing me the execution that I just did for the agent. Like, this is what it called the tool with, the repository URL, and then this is the response that it got. And I know that, like, it doesn't render the new lines properly. Like, it actually just has the /n, so it looks like a mess. But if you render out the new lines here, this is like a very nice view of all of the folders and files within the repo. So that's the response that we got. But it doesn't show me the output from the tool itself. I have to actually go, because it counts as a separate execution. So we have this execution for the agent, and then this execution for the tool. But I can take a look at this and see, like, for my query, this is the repository URL, this is the session ID, which we're not using yet, but we will in a bit. And then I go on to the code, and you can see this is where we extract the organization and the repository. And then I have my HTTP request. And this is where I use the organization and repo to call the GitHub API. And this is where you can see that it's just a huge mess of JSON. Like, this is what we got back from the call, because this is the JSON that represents all of the files and folders in this repository. And so now I have to take that huge mess and turn that into this nice little JSON right here. That is the response, that with everything formatted nicely in natural language for the LLM. So there we go. We now have an LLM that can understand the structure of a repository, which is super neat. But then the other thing that we want to do is we want to make it so that it can actually read specific files as well. So I'm going to implement that second tool right now so that it can understand file structures of the repo and also view individual files. And then we will be done with our initial prototype. And then I'll go back to answering some more questions. So let's get through this right now. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to actually distinguish between this tool and the next tool that I'm going to add. And so I'm going to add another extra workflow input here. So this is going to be another value that is passed into my tool. I'm going to call this action. And the action is going to be the exact same as the name of the tool itself. So this is getting around the issue that I spoke to maybe like 10 minutes ago with a really good question that someone put in the chat. This gets around the issue where you can only have one execute workflow trigger in an n8n workflow. So if I have multiple tools, I can't actually have multiple execute workflow triggers. But what I can do is manually specify which action I'm taking with this tool call. And then within here, I can actually branch out based on what that value is. So you'll see exactly what I mean in just a little bit here. This is how we're going to make it so that we can have multiple tools that are all handled within the same sub workflow of our n8n agent workflow. So now I'm going to add another tool here. It's going to be another call n8n workflow tool. And for the name of this one, I'm going to just copy this from my example. I want to move a little bit quicker here just because I want to get back to questions for you all. So it's going to be call get repo file content tool. The name of this one is going to be get file content. And then for the description, use this tool to get the contents of a specific file in the GitHub repository. And then again, for the workflow, we just want to call that same sub workflow. So it's going to be workflow.id. And then the field to return is just going to be data. So this is like structure was the name of the key returned by the other tool. This tool is going to return something called data because it's just going to be the data for the file essentially. And then we're going to add the similar extra workflow inputs. So first of all, we have the session ID, which I guess I don't really need to use this in this prototype. But once we integrate with the Live Agent Studio, this is going to be really important. So we'll get to that later. And then for the action, instead of get repo structure, it is going to be get file content. And then for the input schema here, again, I'm just going to copy this to move a little bit faster here, especially because we already set up a tool. For the repository URL, this is the exact same as the other parameter, but now we have a second input to this tool. So the first tool only cares about the repository URL, but this one also needs the path to the file that it's going to analyze, because it's going to combine the repository URL with the file path to get that full path to the raw file to get the contents of, to use that as the response back to the user to answer a question about the file or whatever. And I'm also giving it some examples here, because I want to make it clear to the large language model that this is a relative path based on the root of the repo. Like for, let me just give an example here. The README, for example, that we have right here. This is at the root of the repository, as in it is not in any one of these folders here. And so the path to it is literally just the name of the file, readme.md. But then if I want to go into a folder, like if I want to look at the contents of this file right here, the path is going to be .github/workflows/ci.yaml. And so that's kind of one of the examples I give here, like the icon.svg, that you have to go into the public folder. And so that relative path is going to be combined with the repository URL to get that full HTTP request, that URL for that file. So I hope that makes sense. So we have our tool set up now. Super neat. Now we need to edit this sub workflow here, because we have to branch based on if we are using the get repo structure tool or if we are using the call or the repo file content tool. So key distinguishment there. And we're actually going to make that split right here. So no matter which tool we're using, we want to extract the organization and repo, because whether we're getting the structure of a repo or the contents of a specific file, we need these two pieces of information. So no matter the tool, we do this, but then this is where we use a switch to route based on which tool we are actually using. And so for the value here, we're going to use the action that is given in the execute workflow trigger. So this value right here, the action, that is what I am referencing right here in this switch statement. And so if the value is equal to get repo structure, then we'll go to that first route. And then we'll have another route right here if the same thing is equal to get file content. And again, I'm switching this to an expression. So if it's fixed, that means this is just raw text. If it's an expression, that means it's actually using JavaScript to resolve the value. And that's what will actually get me the action from the workflow trigger. And if that is get file content, then we go to the second route. And that is everything that we have to set up here. And so now we have these, let me close out of that. Now we have these two nodes here. There are these two branches. So I'm going to have my original get file structure go to this path right here. And then for this new tool, this is going to go down this second path right here, because if the action is get file content, that's when we need to actually get the file content. And this tool is actually simpler. Thank goodness. We don't even have to have a code node at the end here. All we're going to need is an HTTP request. And the cool thing is, this one is also just using the GitHub API in a very similar way. So the URL for this is kind of the most complicated part. So let me go into the expression editor here and paste this in. And I'll explain this really quickly. So the URL is raw.githubusercontent.com. And then you have the organization and the repo, just like we have with that other request. And then we're just looking at the main branch. Again, we're assuming that there is a main branch for the primary branch of the repo. And that's a fine assumption to make as we're just building a prototype. And then we have the file path right here. So whatever is passed into our execute workflow trigger as the file path, that is what we use at the end of this URL. And I'll even show you that this looks very familiar. If you click on the raw button right here within a file in GitHub, I'll click on this right here, you'll see that, oh, wait a second, that looks exactly like what I formatted in n8n. We have raw.githubusercontent.com / the organization / the repo name, and then we have main / and then the path to the file. So that it matches exactly with what we see right here. So there you go. That's how I figured out initially how to format this URL here. So just a little bit of an insight of the research that I did to make this possible. So let me make this look all nice. And then let's see, what else do I need to do? Oh yeah, I have to add in my GitHub credential again. So again, predefined credential type, and then I already set up GitHub and showed you how to do that. So I'm going to select this here, and there we go. And then the output field for this HTTP request is going to be a key called data. And again, that is what I said I'm expecting in this tool right here. The field to return is data. And so now I'm going to save this and we can actually test it out. And if this works first try, like the other tool did, then we already have the prototype for our agent built out. There's a lot of things that are missing, like it might be nice to actually implement a RAG pipeline to process all of the repositories that we're asking questions about, but that is going to come later in the series. Right now, for a simple prototype, this will do. Like we can ask questions, basically any question that we want over a repository. And as long as it can understand which file to look at to answer your question, we don't even necessarily need RAG. We don't have to have that kind of vector lookup if it understands the full file structure and the file names are intuitive enough. And we'll definitely add that later, but yeah, this will work pretty well. So I'm going to go into the chat here and I'm going to say, what are the contents of .env.example? And so now it will actually call this tool. Looks like it failed, so I messed up somewhere, but it did call this tool to get the contents of the file. So now all I have to do to fix this is, again, go to the executions, look at the execution of my tool, and see what the heck I did wrong. Let me see here. The resource you are requesting could not be found. Okay, interesting. So it looks like the LLM hallucinated because it, for some reason, gave me the org and repo of Streamlit, which is super weird. Wow. Because the repository URL, it gave Streamlit. Not really sure why I did that. It might be because I was using the same conversation within different... oh, yeah, it's because I restarted the conversation without realizing it. Okay, so that's my bad. But also, that's kind of an issue. Like, we'll probably need to somehow in the system message say something like, if you don't know the URL to the GitHub repository, do not just assume it. Like, you have to know it. Like, that's the kind of thing you can add to fix that sort of issue. So I'm not concerned by that. I'll take care of that later, though, because, again, this is just a prototype. Like, we're giving ourselves permissions to mess around here and not fix all the super tiny things right away, because we just want to get something up and running that is working well. So giving it the repo again, and I'll say, what are the contents of the .env.example file? This time it shouldn't totally botch that. There we go. Okay, so it called the tool, and this time it was a success, and it's taking its sweet time here to give me a response. Not really sure why, but there we go. Yeah, so here is the content of the file. I guess it's taking its sweet time because this is actually a larger file. But yeah, this looks phenomenal. It's got all of the different API keys with instructions on how to get them. And this matches exactly with what we have right here in the repo. So looks like it got it perfect. So there we go. We now have this agent that is able to, when we give it a GitHub repository, analyze the file structure of it and actually answer questions about specific files. And then if we ask it a question where it needs to dig into the files, hopefully, given the structure and names of the files, it can distinguish which files it should look at to get an answer. Like if I ask it a question about the workbench in bolt.diy or how it handles conversation history, it should be able to look through, like the app and then go into the components and be like, oh yeah, okay, here we go. I'll go into chat and this is how I can understand the chat, how it handles chat history, that kind of thing. And then later on, we can implement RAG so that it can actually do a vector search to find answers to questions as well. That'd kind of be like a third tool that we'd have here. And that's definitely a more complicated piece to this whole thing, which is why I'm not doing it as a prototype here. But later on in the series, I think that'll actually be a very important addition. And a little teaser here, I have actually been working on that already. Let me show you this right here. I've already started to work on the Pydantic AI version of this agent. So a little bit of a sneak peek of what's coming in the series here. None of this code is like super bulletproof at this point. I just started working on it, but a lot of what we're building in n8n right now as the prototype is implemented through these agent tools right here, like getting the contents of a file in GitHub. And I even have like extra logic here, like check the main branch, and then if the main branch doesn't exist, then check the master branch. So again, going from a prototype into something that's actually a bit more production ready, implementing that kind of logic here as well. And then within the Pydantic AI agent version, that is also when I'm going to implement some sort of RAG system as well to have that lookup along with what we are building right here in n8n. So a lot of more cool things to come for this series as we're building up this agent, but we already have something that's pretty neat. Like, this is pretty sweet, the kinds of questions that we can ask it already. And again, I have this agent right here already available on the Live Agent Studio for you to try right now. Basically, what we built right here is what is available within this agent. So this exact prototype is available for you to try right now on the Live Agent Studio. And with that, I'm going to take another swig of coffee here. This is definitely a longer live stream than I thought it was going to be. But I appreciate that because this is a blast. So I'm going to take a break and answer some questions here. And then the next thing that I want to get to is the making it compatible with the Live Agent Studio. And that's going to be kind of the last part of this stream. And then we'll close it off. And I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. So let me scroll through some more questions here. There was a lot after I finished answering questions. I might miss a couple. I really apologize for that because my chat was flooding before. Oh, I had to delay the ads again. Shoot. Okay, I clicked on delay ads again. So sorry, guys, if you were seeing a bunch of ads. I really wish it wasn't like that. But yeah, let me scroll up and try to find where there was a last. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so Kamar said, I'm trying this for a local repo and trying Langflow. Should I shift to this approach? You know, Langflow is pretty good. I haven't used it too much myself, besides just a tiny bit of prototyping. But I like this. But obviously, like, if you want to follow along with this whole series, it would make sense to shift to this approach. Because I'm going to make it very straightforward throughout the whole process. And again, all of this stuff is going to be open source and available for you to download. So yeah, I mean, it might be easier to switch. I hope that helps. Jake asked, any recommendations on where to host n8n for a relatively low cost? My recommendation is DigitalOcean. This is where I host my n8n instance. It's a really awesome and affordable platform, cloud platform. That would be my recommendation. You can literally get an instance, like a regular CPU instance, like not a GPU droplet, but a regular CPU instance for like $7 a month. That can definitely host n8n, especially for any personal use. I mean, you obviously have to scale it once you have a ton of users on your platform, but to start, literally $7 a month. Let's see, what else we got? Is this the first part of the RAG mini-series you were talking about? Good question. So no, this series is focused specifically on building an AI agent from scratch. And so RAG is going to be a part of it because I think it's going to be really powerful to have that be a part of this whole workflow as another way for the agent to get to the correct answer. But there's definitely more dedicated content that I'm looking to do for RAG in the future. So kind of another series that I want to do within the next few months here on my channel, going into the new year. Let's see. I tried your Google Drive RAG AI agent, but when I tried uploading multiple files at once to Google Drive, the execution always came back as an error. Yeah, so unfortunately that's something that I wish I wanted to start simple. So I created the workflow to only handle one upload at a time. I kind of wish that I had taken that extra step to make it handle multiple, because even though it makes the workflow more complicated, it would have made sense. But yeah, there is more that you have to do in the setup for that RAG agent to handle multiple files being uploaded to Google Drive at the same time. Because when multiple files are uploaded at the same time, they're all added to that single trigger. So the workflow will trigger because it pulls Google Drive every minute for a new file, and there'll actually be multiple files coming in at the same time. So you have to add a loop to loop through each file and then do what I'm already doing in the workflow, where you extract the text, vectorize it, and then add it into the Supabase vector database. So yeah, it doesn't take much work to add in that looping, but you do have to do that. And yeah, I might make more content on expanding that, but also I might just do that as a part of this mini series as well to do a more advanced RAG within n8n. So yeah. Does Pydantic work in Flowise? That is a good question, Jason. So Flowise and Pydantic, I don't think they would necessarily play well together unless you're using Flowise as your tools for Pydantic, kind of like you could do with n8n. I don't think that super makes sense, so I'd maybe say no to that. Like I wouldn't try to combine Pydantic with Flowise because they're kind of doing the same thing. Flowise is just a no-code way to make your AI agents, and then Pydantic is obviously a very code-centric way to do that. So if anything, I would prototype in Flowise and then build your agent with Pydantic AI. Naramas, great work, Cole. Thank you very much. In November live session, I mentioned a live session with 25 agents working simultaneously to get the final output. When is that? I think you're referring to, I said that I was going to test bolt.diy with a bunch of local LLMs. And I still want to do that. I just think that my content is kind of strayed more towards AI agents, at least for now. So I don't really want to make a whole video on using local LLMs with bolt.diy. Not yet, especially because most local LLMs just aren't that powerful at this point. They don't do very well as AI coding assistants. So I got a little ahead of myself saying I was going to try 25 of them. I still want to do that, but it's going to be pretty underwhelming for a lot of, especially the smaller models, because they just can't handle large prompts like you have with Bolt. But it would be cool to do that at some point. I just don't have a set date and time for that. Perfect project. Thank you, Spicer. A needed utility leveraging agents. Can we make it autonomous? I'm not really sure why you'd want to make a GitHub assistant autonomous, because it's meant to be a conversational bot for you to ask questions and then it pull from GitHub in real time. But if there's some way that you can think of modifying it where it'd be useful to be an autonomous agent, you definitely can, because you can have n8n workflows. Actually, let me show you guys all this quick. If I search for cron, a schedule trigger. So there's another type of trigger in n8n called a schedule trigger. And what this guy will do is it'll just trigger the workflow automatically every day, or you can do every minute, every 5 minutes. That's how you can set up an agent to run autonomously if you have to have it do something every day or every hour or whatever. And so you can use that kind of schedule trigger to run an agent every so often to do things autonomously. Like maybe you want to set up a workflow that processes a GitHub repository every day because repos change every day, and then re-index it into a vector database. Like you could set that up as a schedule trigger in n8n, and that way you have something that's running autonomously. Maybe that's a good example to what you're asking. Scuffron asks, what is the best free AI coder? So, I mean, bolt.diy is an awesome open source project that me and the community are working on. That's a good option as well. I would say, I think Cursor is open source, so I think that's free. I forget if I paid for it or not. But that Cursor is awesome as well. Windsurf was free at one point, and then they made it paid, which is super unfortunate. But it makes sense though. I mean, they were blowing through so much money when they were in beta, giving it away for free. So unfortunately, that's not free anymore, but it's worth the money. I'll say that at least. Yeah, let's see. How can one pre-made agent on Automator invoke another agent? For example, the GitHub agent handing off to the n8n helper agent. So I haven't implemented anything like this where the agents on the Live Agent Studio can actually communicate with each other, but that would be super cool. I haven't really found, or I haven't thought of a good use for that yet, but it would be very easy to do because all of my agents, here I'll even show this really quick. Let's see. I'm gonna do this off camera. I'm not gonna show like all my workflows on camera, but let me go to an example of a workflow that I have. Like here's one. So this is the Reddit Small Business Researcher agent that I've got with n8n. This is one of the agents that you can try right now on the Live Agent Studio, and it's a webhook request. Like I said, to make it compatible with the Live Agent Studio and to use n8n as tools, like all of that is using the webhook trigger to the workflow. And so because I'm turning this agent into an API endpoint right here, I can call this within another n8n workflow, literally just using the HTTP request node. And so let me close out of this, leave. Like I'm making an HTTP request right here. I could make a request to the agent instead, and then boom, I'm now talking to that agent. So it actually is very easy because all the agents are API endpoints to have them communicate with each other. And so if I were to ever find a really good use for that, which I'm sure I would, to have that agent interconnectivity, it'd actually be very, very easy to set that up. All right, and then Jaspel asked, how is n8n different from LangGraph? So in my eyes, they're not actually comparable at all because n8n is a no-code workflow automation tool. You build workflows to connect to different services like Slack and Gmail, and you can build AI agents kind of like what I'm doing right here with the AI agent tools node right here. LangGraph, on the other hand, is a completely coding kind of framework. Like n8n is no/low code, LangGraph is all coding, and it's more for agent orchestration. So having different agents work together and that kind of thing you could set up in n8n, but LangGraph does a lot for you to handle different steps of your agent workflow, managing human approval for things and conversation memory and all of that, and checkpointers in your workflows. There's so many things that it handles that it's very much involved in agent orchestration. The kind of thing that I wouldn't try to do too much in n8n. So I hope that makes sense. I'd say they're very separate platforms. And again, they can work well together. Like you could have n8n agents that are called as a part of your LangGraph agent workflow just by making the agent a API endpoint, like I was just showing with the small business researcher. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. What else we got? Still scrolling. Are the agents in your studio available on your GitHub? Yes, they are. So going back to the Live Agent Studio, you can click on View Source for any of these agents. And you can also click on this link in the footer here, which is going to bring you to the GitHub repo. And so all of the agents that you see on the studio are open source and available here. And so I can click on like sample Python agent and then boom. And there's also super extensive documentation as well. So all of these and the way they integrate with the Live Agent Studio are all open source and available for you, which by the way, for the hackathon competition that I'm hosting, let me go back over to that. I got to plug it again because this is just super exciting for all of us here. The hackathon competition that I'm hosting with a $5,000 prize pool where you just have to build an agent for the Live Agent Studio. All of these agents right here are really good resources for you to look at and see how you can implement an AI agent, not just for yourself and your business. I mean, that's why they're open source, but also so that you can see how to implement them for the Live Agent Studio. So definitely check that out as well. Also, just because I'm plugging the hackathon again here, I'm going to paste a link in the chat. So go ahead and register for this hackathon. If you're interested in building AI agents and you want to win some prize money and showcase your AI mastery to the world, definitely register for this hackathon. It's happening very soon here. So we got registration open until the 8th, and then the competition goes for a couple of weeks in January. And then I will be announcing the winners after we have a community voting on the best agents. So it's going to be an absolute blast. And that's a big reason I'm doing this mini series as well, to help you understand how to build AI agents effectively for yourself, and then also so you can, use this as a resource to compete in the hackathon as well. And that's why in a little bit here, I'll actually show how to turn this agent into one that works for the Live Agent Studio, just kind of as the last part of the live stream here. So yeah, Rita asked, in the future, will you give us a step-by-step tutorial on Supabase, locally hosted and connected with n8n? I actually will, because what I'm planning on doing is taking that local AI starter kit that I've covered a couple times on my channel and replacing Quadrant and vanilla Postgres with Supabase. And that also includes n8n in the package. So it's this local AI package that has Ollama, and it's going to also have Supabase and n8n, and then OpenWebUI as well. And I think I'm missing one as well, but it's all that packaged together, and I'm going to show how to run that entirely locally. So definitely we'll be doing that in the actually very near future, because that local AI starter kit that I've covered a lot on my channel, the most viewed video on my entire channel, like over 300,000 views, my first video on this. Like, I'm going to keep expanding that going into this year, definitely. So yeah, let's see, what else we got? Pinecone or Supabase for RAG in n8n. Both are great. I would say my recommendation is always Supabase to start because it's very simple and it's nice how you can use it for your conversation history and for RAG because it's also a SQL database. But Pinecone, I would say you sometimes get a little bit better performance for actually retrieving the right knowledge from your knowledge base, especially when you start to have like hundreds of thousands or millions of records in your vector database. But until you get to that point, I would say it makes more sense just to use Supabase because it's simple and you're sticking to one platform. So yeah, Top Travel said Supabase as well. So I got some backup on that. Mark asked, what would be your best guess as to how long it would be before all the processes you're doing now will be automated by agents completely? Well, I guess I'm curious, what do you mean by all the processes I'm doing? You mean like everything I'm doing for prototyping an agent with n8n and then building it out with custom code as well? Maybe that's what you're getting at. And I would say that like in general, I don't think that AI is going to completely autonomously build entire things like this for a while. What's going to keep happening though is it's going to be more and more of us using AI as sort of a pair programmer, taking the wheel and us just kind of guiding it more in what we want to build. And that we're already starting to see that happen with AI coding assistants out there, like Bolt and Windsurf and Lovable and Cursor. Like all those are doing so much for us, but it still requires us to give that high level direction of what we're actually looking for. Like maybe I could have an AI agent that builds an entire n8n workflow for me. But it's still going to be me saying like, oh yeah, I want this tool to get the file structure, and I want this tool to go and get the content of specific files. And so that kind of human oversight, I think, is going to be around for a very, very long time. We just can't trust agents at this point to do really complex things like building out a full, complex, production-ready agent without our input a lot. I mean, we'll probably get there at some point. Maybe later this year, maybe 2026. Hard to say. But yeah, I mean, personally myself, I would be very uncomfortable allowing an agent to actually fully build and deploy an agent. Like even for the live agent studio, I'd still very much want to take care of that myself and just have AI help me along the way. I mean, that's the main thing. So yeah, let me keep scrolling here. What is the best option for hosting open source LLMs to be used in tools like n8n or Flowise? So if you want to completely host the LLM yourself, there are a lot of really great cloud platforms if you don't want to be running it on your own computer. Because like if you want it running in the cloud 24/7 to be used in your workflows, then you can use a service like RunPod or Novita AI. There's a lot of cloud providers that provide GPU instances, is what they're called. They're cloud instances that have really good GPUs to run large language models. That would be my recommendation. And then if you don't actually want to host the LLM yourself, you just want to use an open source large language model through an API, then I would recommend going with OpenRouter. OpenRouter is a fantastic platform where with an API, just like using OpenAI's API, you can use all these different open source large language models like DeepSeek and Qwen and Llama. Super easy, and it's dirt cheap as well. Like the new DeepSeek v3 model, it's basically as good as GPT-4o and Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and it is dirt cheap. Like it's like 7 times cheaper than Claude 3.5 Haiku, and it's just as good as Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So I would recommend using OpenRouter if you want to use those models without hosting yourself. So I hope that helps. All right, let me keep scrolling here. All right. How would you verify the JS code? Any tips? So I assume you're talking about like this code that I'm running right here. And I mean, the way that I'd verified is just kind of what I was doing, where I'd run my test workflows. So if my code was broken right here, I would, do the chat. I would say something here, and then it would like try to call the tool, and then it would break. And then I'd go into the executions, look at the tool call, and see what went wrong within my JavaScript function, if that actually was the issue. And then there'll be an error here that should help you understand like what actually went wrong in the function, because it'll give you like the raw error from the console when it fails. So that's how I would debug and just like verify any JavaScript code that I'm using within an n8n workflow. So I hope that helps. Oh wow, there's there are so many more questions. Sandeep asked about OpenAI Swarm. I do have a video on Swarm on my channel. I'm not really going to focus on this in this series because I'm going to use Pydantic AI and then potentially LangGraph together, and I think that combo very much covers what Swarm would typically do. I think Swarm is great, but it's definitely a more experimental framework for an OpenAI. I don't know how much they're really going to be supporting it and developing it. It might just be more of like, I mean, honestly, like something they did for marketing, just to continue to provide open source value to build up their reputation. We'll see how much they actually build it out, but I'm just not sure on that. So I won't be focusing on Swarm a ton. But I definitely did like it when I used it in my video. Very similar to Crew AI. Do you have any dedicated courses for AI agents that we can buy? I do not right now, but that is something I am planning on doing for 2025, because as much as my channel is a great place to provide resources for you to learn about building AI agents and working with local AI and all of that, there's definitely an opportunity for me to go much deeper with something like a dedicated course. And so I'm definitely planning on doing a lot of that going into this year. It just takes a lot of time, a lot of time to develop that out. And I've just been so busy providing you guys so much free value with these videos and the hackathon and the live agent studio and all of that. But I'll get there. I'll definitely get there. Okay, so Cloudways AI asked a very, very good question that I will be talking about a lot on my video on the 1st. He said 2025 will be a turbulent time in my opinion, and I definitely agree for AI. He asked, what are your views on what will be big changes that we will see? So very good question. I don't want to tease too much about what I'm going to be talking about on my video on the 1st, but I'm going to be answering this question exactly. Just to name a few things very quick here. First of all, reasoning large language models like QWQ, O1, O3, Gemini 2.0 flash thinking. These kind of models are going to absolutely dominate 2025, and they're going to be so important for building agent workflows. Which, speaking of agent workflows, AI agents are also going to be massive going into 2025. They already kind of are, but they're just going to be doing so much for us going forward. I mean, we've already kind of set the groundwork in 2024 with best practices for AI agents and creating large language models that are actually good enough for agents to make good decisions. Like, we have all this now. Now is the time to just build on top of that and build agents for our businesses. And we're just going to see that like so much, all the way from small businesses all the way to corporate enterprises. So those are a couple of things. Also, local AI, I think, is going to be huge for 2025. So yeah, I'll just leave it there. Got an awesome video coming on the 1st, 7 o'clock Central Time, that you don't want to miss, where I'll really be talking about that. Let's see. Wow, there are so many questions. Unfortunately, I really don't know if I'm going to be able to get to all the questions. What I'm going to do in a little bit here, so I'll get through a couple more questions, and then I want to make this AI agent compatible with the live agent studio. So I'll do that, and then I'll end off with some more Q&A, because this live stream has already been going on for an hour and 40 minutes. I'm going to lose my voice today, honestly. So yeah, I got to protect my voice so I can actually talk when I have my time off for the end of the year. Otherwise, that wouldn't be very fun. But yeah, let me get through a couple of questions. I mean, it's totally worth it, but still, it'd be nice to not lose my voice. So let me get through a couple of more questions here, and then I will make this agent compatible with the live agent studio. So next question. Might be a stupid question. No question is stupid. But can you recommend any courses or books for non-tech to understand and work with AI agents? There's a bombardment of info, but a majority of them leave me lost. That is totally fair. So the first thing that I'll say is that my series that I'm working on, like with this live stream and videos that I got coming out on my channel, I think this is actually going to be a really good resource for non-technical people that are trying to become more semi-technical. And that's especially why I'm focusing on n8n a lot to start, and building with no/low code tools. So I don't just mean to plug my own content, but I just know like I'm working hard to make this something good for you. So it definitely is worth mentioning. And then in general, like, there's not a lot of books that are really good for AI agents at this point. Like, the whole sphere of AI agents is so much the Wild West right now. There's not just like some big book that I can recommend. Let me adjust the lighting here. There's not some like big book that I can recommend like I could for growing a business, or understanding AI in general, or deep learning, like all those more well-established concepts. And so it's not something big I can say. As far as courses though, I would just say like YouTube University, as I always call it. Like you're just Googling like understanding AI agents and building AI agents with tools like n8n. YouTube is honestly the best place for that. And it's free, usually. So that's definitely what I'd recommend. And then also getting involved with a community that's interested in AI is also super important for learning and growing with other people as well. And that's kind of a whole course of its own, just to network with people, share what you're building, have them share with you, and just learning from each other. So yeah, maybe not like exactly the answer you're looking for. It's just hard because everything's just so new with AI, and especially with AI agents. So yeah, just a couple more questions here, and then I'll get back to it. Can we do predictive analysis from analytics data platforms? That's a good question. I don't know if that's really related to this stream though. Maybe if you expand on the question more, I'd love to answer. But yeah, let me go to the next one here. Yeah, so this is a good question. If I have an agent that I want to do something with in Notion, like to take a bunch of actions in Notion, do I have to create a separate node for each action? And the answer is yes, you do. So if you want to add a new note in Notion, or edit one, or delete one, or add a new member to your team, like whatever action might be within the platform, those all have to be separate tools that you set up either through separate workflows, or you might just have like a Notion tool right here. So Notion tool, and then I would select what I want to do. Like I want to, like create a page, or I want to, let's see, database, get many. I want to get many databases. Like each of these you'd have to set up as different nodes in your workflow, or if you're coding an agent, they'd have to be different functions that you set up and give to your agent. Again, using the title and description and parameters to tell it when and how to use each of those functions within Notion. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see. What are your thoughts on, all right, this is my last question. Then I'll get on to actually making this compatible with the Live Agent Studio. So what are your thoughts on building an agent to retrieve information/knowledge on applications within company from technical documents stored in SharePoint in docx format? Maybe you could clarify what thoughts you're looking for. I mean, that's definitely a really common use case within companies. A ton of companies use SharePoint, and then the format that you're storing in SharePoint doesn't really matter too much. I mean, any format you're going to be able to take in from the SharePoint API and then add to your knowledge base, just turning whatever you have into raw text, whether it's docs or PDFs or text documents, PowerPoints, like whatever it is, like you can just turn that into raw text and then ingest it. But yeah, I mean, that's a super common use case for AI agents. Typically, like one thing I will say is like typically you're not going to have the agent do any kind of like this vectorization or indexing in real time. Usually what you would do is you would have a process that runs in the background that searches through everything in SharePoint and updates everything in the vector database every so often, like every hour or 15 minutes or day or whatever. And then you'd have separately your n8n agent, or your agent that's custom coded, whatever, that would answer questions based on that knowledge. So you have the whole indexing separate from the agent itself, because a lot of times taking all the files from SharePoint or Google Drive, wherever you have your knowledge base, that can take a while. So you don't want to actually have the agent do that in real time, typically. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah. I think with that, we can actually go into making this agent compatible with the Live Agent Studio. And so this is going to be the last thing that I do before I close off this stream. And luckily, it's actually very easy to do so. And so I'm not going to build this from scratch. Instead, I actually want to just show you what I already have built. Let me paste this in here. I want to show you what I already have built, so that way we don't have to go through this entire process, because I know that we've already gone pretty long with this stream. But I want to walk you through and kind of compare between the two what I did to make it work for the Live Agent Studio. So first of all, if you want to build an agent for the Live Agent Studio, it's a fantastic way for you to contribute to an open source community building awesome AI agents together. And I have this guide right here, which this is also what you use if you want to participate in the $5,000 prize pool hackathon as well. You'll use this guide as well to build your agents for the platform. Now, the reason that there has to be a guide in the first place, and you can't just build any agent you want, is obviously because I host all these agents myself and have it all on one platform with my database, there has to be a standardization, a way that the agents accept input and output information, and the way that they handle conversation history. Because without all that being standardized, there's no way for me to host all these agents on a single front end and have them all available for you to try in a very standardized way. And so this guide is what we have to follow when we take our agent and make it compatible with the AI agent or with the Live Agent Studio. And so this documentation is super, super long, but the only reason for that is because it's super comprehensive. I tell you everything that you need to make your agent compatible. And I give you sample agents as well. So if I click on sample n8n agent, this is going to bring me straight to our Automator agents open source repo that has all the agents that I was showing earlier. And we can just download the workflow JSON. So I can use the agent node example. I can just take this and I can download this file, download it, boom, and then I can import it into n8n. So actually, let me do that quickly here. I'm going to, one second, I'm going to make a new workflow, bring this into here. And then I'm going to import from file, downloads, boom, there we go. All right, so that's all I did. So I downloaded it from GitHub, and then I brought it into my n8n. And what this shows right here is an example of how you build an AI agent in n8n using the tools agent node that we have in our workflow right here to make it compatible with the Live Agent Studio. And you can see that it's not actually that complicated. We turn our agent into an API endpoint. That's what I did right here. And then we have all these specific input parameters that we need to handle. So going back to the guide here, we have all these specific input parameters that our agent needs to handle. And I explain all of this in the documentation. I even have this video right here to walk you through it if you prefer watching a video. And so yeah, let me go back down here. So we have everything you need to understand the input parameters, everything to understand the output parameters, and what it takes to manage the conversation history. And I make it so easy, and this template gives you everything that you need. So we take in all of our parameters right here. And then we have our AI agent tools node. And yeah, like there's not much we actually have to do here because I made the Live Agent Studio chat memory compatible with the way that the tool node sets it up. So when we have our Postgres memory right here, which is literally just connected to my Supabase account, that's all that it takes to have the conversation memory for the agent that is compatible with the Live Agent Studio. And then for the chat model here, I can use Anthropic, like I'm using Claude 3.5 Haiku. I can set up Google Gemini Chat if I want to use Gemini Flash. I can set up whatever model I want. And then all the tools right here, I can set up just like I have right here. So it's super easy to make an agent. So you just take whatever you built in n8n and then build it on top of this template right here. And then boom, there you go. You now have an agent that is compatible with the Live Agent Studio. So you can go ahead and right here, go over to the hackathon. You can register, all right, and then you can go to the submit agent and then submit your agent. And as long as you did everything to make it compatible with the Live Agent Studio, your submission is good. And then boom, you've now entered in the competition and you have a chance to win a bunch of money for participating in the hackathon here. So that's all it takes to build an agent. And so specifically for this GitHub agent, this n8n workflow we're looking at right here, this is exactly what I have hosted right now on the Live Agent Studio. So this agent right here that you can try right now that I showed at the start of the live stream. Here, I'll even show it again really quick. So this agent right here that I can talk to with a GitHub repository link, what I just showed in n8n is exactly what I have hosted right here, like node for node. I didn't do anything else. And so, yeah, I can just go over this really quickly here. So I have this webhook right here, and I have this pinned data. So this example request that has my query, and then it has the user ID, request ID, and the session ID. The session ID is what I use for basically determining the specific conversation that the message is a part of. And then for my chat memory, I'm just hooking into my Postgres account, which, by the way, to get your credentials for Postgres, I can just show this really quickly here. All you have to do is go to your Supabase dashboard and then go to project settings and then click on API. And then here's everything that you need. So you have your URL, your anonymous API key, your service role key. If you're using Supabase, you get all your credentials here, and then you just have to go into n8n. Let me go back here. Click on create new credentials. And then, yeah, you can see that everything that you need is all right here. Well, actually, yeah, that's the wrong tab. You need the database tab. Sorry. So you go to Supabase, you go to project settings, and then you go to your database tab. This gives you everything that you need for connecting to your database. Oh, okay, they actually moved it. That is super interesting. You can find project connection details by clicking on connect in the top bar. This is actually brand new. Okay, cool. That is good to know. All right, so yeah, you click on connect at the top, and this gives you all the information that you need for your host, port, database, user, and then you just enter all that into Postgres. So that's how you hook up Supabase. It's super, super easy. And the beauty of using the AI agent node in n8n is it automatically creates that messages table for you. So this is the table that handles the conversation history in Supabase, and this node automatically creates it for you. So once you hook up your credentials and you say, I want to use Postgres with Supabase for my memory, it'll automatically create that messages table, which, by the way, I'll just show that really quickly here. Messages, boom, like this is my message table right here. And it creates that automatically within n8n, which is super neat. And then for my tools, these are exactly the same. Like what we're looking at right here is almost exactly the same as this prototype that we just built right here. The only difference is I have a couple of extra, I deactivated a node. Okay, I did not mean to do that. All right. The only difference here is I have an extra step for both of my tools that adds an AI message to the messages table. And this is pretty neat because what this does is allows me to report in real time what the agent is doing. So right here, when I'm chatting with the agent and I say something like, what are the contents of .env.example? It's pretty neat because before it actually gives me the final response, it'll actually tell me what it is doing. Like it'll say like, oh, I'm getting the contents of this file, and then it'll give me the final response. And the way that it's able to do that and report back to me in real time before it's even giving me the contents of the file, like we're seeing right here, it's inserting a message into the database. And so it's saying, if I click on this, I'm inserting into the messages table in Postgres, and I'm giving the session ID because that's for that specific conversation. And then the contents of my message is just this JSON object where it's of type AI because it's an AI message. And then I'm saying I'm getting the contents of, and then the file path that I passed into this tool. Super easy to set this up. And now in real time, we're actually getting these updates, which is super cool. And if it were to, like understand the contents of multiple files, we would get a bunch of messages streamed here with all the different files that it's taking a look at. And so that's a way for us to get visibility into the agent and what it's doing for the tool calls. And that's all possible with the Live Agent Studio because I just have to add inserts into the database. And so if you're curious how this agent works more specifically, you can literally just go to my Automator agents repository. Here, I'll even link this right here. Let me send this in the chat really quick. I'm going to send a link to this GitHub repo. You can download this workflow JSON for the GitHub Assistant, which is exactly what I have hosted in the Live Agent Studio here. It's exactly what I'm showing with this n8n workflow. And you can bring it into your own n8n to use this as an example for building an agent with the Live Agent Studio for the hackathon or beyond, whatever you want to do. This is just a resource that I have for you to make it so easy to understand, not just how to build something for the Live Agent Studio, but also just how to build a robust agent in general. I mean, this agent's pretty sweet, especially just for a prototype. And so that's pretty much all I have to do. And then the only other thing that you need to do to make it compatible with the Live Agent Studio is essentially just produce that final JSON that says whether or not the workflow succeeded. So you can catch any errors and say that the success is false, or if it worked, then you just say the success is true. And again, that's all going along with the documentation that we have here for the developer guide. So we talked about the input parameters, and we talked about storing messages in the database and how that is automatically working with the AI agent node. And then we get to the output here, where you just say success is true or false. And the reason that we just have to output this is because all of the AI messages are stored directly in the database, which is really nice. So our output from the API call is actually very, very basic. So I hope that makes sense. It's pretty neat that we're using Gemini 2.0 Flash for all of this. Again, because it's such a fast model, it's super important as we have the, let me go back to that conversation here. Let me go back. It's kind of important, like, let me refresh here. Oh no, here we go. All right, it's like, look at this output. It's completely massive. Like, we need to have a fast model if we're going to have something that outputs this much text. And so that's why this is a really good example, not just to build a cool agent for the Live Agent Studio, but specifically to take advantage of Gemini 2.0 Flash. Because if we had a slower model like o1 or something, like, oh, this would be way too slow, like for the amount of output that it has to do here. Or if I had a local LLM that was running on my computer and it's putting out like 10 tokens a second, like this would take forever to output. But with Gemini 2.0 Flash, it's super fast, which is really neat. So yeah, the other thing I want to say for the Live Agent Studio in general is please use these resources to understand how to build your agents for the hackathon and just for the Live Agent Studio in general. I have some sample agents as well that I call out in the documentation. I already showed that. So we took a look at the sample n8n agent, but also there's a sample Python agent. So if you want to know how to build an agent with Python specifically, because you want to get into some custom coding, then definitely check this out. Because I have really extensive documentation for how you can use both Supabase and just any Postgres database to build an agent for Python. And so this template allows you to basically just add the little part in the middle where you actually get the response from your agent, and you could use Pydantic AI or LangChain or something entirely custom with the OpenAI API or Anthropic, like whatever you want to do. You can do that within here. You get the agent response, and then I have all the logic here to manage the conversation history and the authentication for the requests to the agent, like using Fast API. Super easy to get started. So don't feel like you're limited to using n8n to build your agents. It's very easy to do with Python as well. I just offer no/low code because n8n is awesome, and a lot of people don't want to custom code an agent anyway. So that is that. And then the very last thing I want to say is that you can also use VoiceFlow. So VoiceFlow is an awesome platform. Let me go to it really quickly here, voiceflow.com. VoiceFlow is an awesome platform for building agents without code, and it's not free and open source like n8n, but I still think there's a really good time and place for it, especially because of how easy it makes it to build knowledge base agents with RAG. n8n, it gets a little tricky with that, but VoiceFlow takes care of it so well. It's an awesome platform, and I developed a custom integration with the Live Agent Studio and VoiceFlow. So you can build any agent that you want in VoiceFlow, and it will automatically be accessible and working with the Live Agent Studio without you having to do any of the stuff that we see here, managing the API call and the parameters that come in, and doing specific things with the database and things like that. Like all of that is handled automatically with VoiceFlow, which is super cool. So those are kind of like the three big options for building an agent for the Live Agent Studio. I'll even show this back in the developer guide here as I talk about the platforms. So any Python framework, like I was saying, n8n, Flowise as well, and then VoiceFlow. And then also the other thing is you can use anything as long as it's within a Docker container. So if you want to build a Go agent, for example, or if you want to build an agent with Rust, like be my guest. I don't want to host these things outside of Docker because then my infrastructure has to have everything set up for Go and Rust and all these other languages. But if you put it within a Docker container and you handle the API request and the conversation memory and everything within your Go or Rust agent or whatever, then I can instantly host it for the Live Agent Studio in minutes. And so, yeah, there you go. I mean, like you can pretty much do anything you want. You just have to get a little bit creative if you are going to do it in a Docker container. But also my example here for the sample Python agent, if I go back to it here, I also have a Docker file. So I show how to containerize it as well. So you can use that as a starting point, even if you're building an agent not with Python. So I hope that's helpful. So I'd love to have you guys participate in the hackathon. I'm just going to plug it one more time quick as we close out this stream here. I'll do a Q&A and then end off the stream. Yeah, register for the hackathon. It's going to be a blast. Registration is open until the 8th. So definitely sign up and start planning and building your AI agent. And I'm going to keep pumping out a ton of content and resources for this hackathon. And really, this whole mini series that I'm doing, helping you build AI agents, part of it is to help for the hackathon as well. I mean, I wanted to do this series anyway. And so I'm providing a lot of value even outside of building an agent for the Live Agent Studio. But it's part of the focus because it's just really good timing to have this be another resource for you as you're building an agent for the Live Agent Studio for the hackathon. So yeah, that's everything that I got. I think with that, I will do some Q&A and then turn off the stream here. All right. Wow, there are so many questions. I appreciate it, guys. Like this has been a blast of a stream, and the fact that like concurrent viewers have stayed like at or above 200 is just amazing. So thank you everyone for being here and supporting and just checking out everything and yeah, building an agent together. I've never done that live on a stream before. So even though it was just a prototype, something pretty simple within n8n, it was still a blast to do that. So thank you everyone. Wow. Okay. So many questions. I'm just trying to like scroll up right now to where there was the last question that I answered, and I'm going up pretty far here. Okay, here we go. I finally found it. All right, by the way, I'm watching for every AI YouTuber, every video for 2.5 years. You are the best, absolutely number one. Thank you very much, Easty. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, I mean, that means the world. Yeah, let's see here. All right. Where can I get the templates that you are showcasing? So yeah, fantastic question. All of the agents on the Live Agent Studio, all you have to do is go to the URL studio.ottomator.ai. You can try all these agents here, and then to view the source for them, you just have to click on the View Source button, and that'll bring you straight to this GitHub repository that I've been showcasing here, where you can download all of these agents yourself. So the workflow JSON to import into your n8n, or if it's like a Python agent, you can download all the code. Super easy to get started implementing any of these agents yourself. So I hope that helps. A spiritual AI said n8n makes sense for small businesses. And I definitely agree. Like it's so easy even for a non-technical business owner to automate a lot with n8n without even having to spend too much time. So yeah, I definitely agree with that, especially when you don't want to pay a bunch of developers to build complex things for you. Okay, Timers asks, I just added other AIs in one big AI. Is it in n8n? How can I do this? I apologize. I don't quite get your question. You added other AI in one big AI. Well, the one thing I will say is that if you have like a custom agent set up somehow, like you want to bring in an AI, I would make it an API endpoint. And then within n8n, you can call it as an API endpoint. That's what I would say. I hope that helps answer your question. Because basically, if there's not a direct integration with n8n and whatever you're trying to call, just turn it into an API endpoint, and then you're going to be able to call it. And you can have authentication for the API endpoint and everything like that. So that's what I would say. When creating a chatbot with a knowledge base for a client using an n8n workflow, what do you recommend for the interface? Full screen with URL, Flowwise, or voice flow? So that's a good question. It depends a lot on what you are building. Like if you're building a customer-facing chatbot that's going to sit as like a widget on a website, then I would just use voice flow. Or I mean, n8n also has some widgets that you can embed as well. They don't look quite as nice, but you can use that as well. That's what I'd recommend. If it's like an internal facing site where you want it to be like a full screen window for someone to interact with an agent, then I would recommend creating a custom front end, because you can use tools like Bolt or Lovable to build them really, really easily and deploy them super quick. And so you can do that very easily. So I'd just be like creating a React front end with an AI coding assistant. Or another good option is Streamlit. So Streamlit is a Python UI library that you can use an AI coding assistant as well to help you build very, very easily. I like Streamlit a lot. It's meant for, they have a lot of integrations for creating specifically LLM chatbots, which makes it really nice, like managing the conversations in the UI and things like that. So I would definitely recommend checking that out as well. So I hope that helps. Is it possible to connect a human mind to AI? I think it's being done. And how can we get to know what's going on in Silicon Valley, USA? That is a good question. I wish I had a good answer because I would love to know everything that's being done there as well. Because sometimes I wonder, like, what if all these big things we're working towards have already been achieved and we're just waiting for them to be released? I mean, who knows? Connecting a human mind to AI, I mean, Elon Musk basically already did that, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot more coming in this year for that kind of stuff. um, let's see. Rita said, I remember now why I couldn't get Supabase to work locally. You can't set the embedding size. Is that really true? You can't set the embedding size like Quadrant. You have to use OpenAI's embeddings with size 1500. I think that depends. Because when you create the embedding column with PG Vector, you should be able to set whatever size you want. So you just match whatever the size is for the embedding model that you want to use. Like if you want to use the text embedding small embedding model from OpenAI, I think it's like 700 some parameters instead of 1500. I think you can just change your embedding column to match that number in Supabase. So I'd be a little confused if you wouldn't be able to. That's super unfortunate though if you can't, because that's super important. But I know that I've done it with the cloud Supabase, so it should be doable with the local one as well. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so Cloud Where X asks, where do you get all your API access from? Direct from Anthropic or OpenAI or through third-party services? So typically it's directly through Anthropic or OpenAI. If I'm using those models specifically. Also, though, my favorite option in general for working with a huge range of LLMs is using OpenRouter, because OpenRouter is fantastic. They have access to basically any model you could ever want. So you send a request to their API, and then they'll direct it to the right provider. And so you can also use a lot of cheaper LLMs that are still very, very powerful. Like my recommendation would be to use OpenRouter to connect to DeepSeek v3. It's a new open source model that was released recently. Well, maybe not open source because I think their data is proprietary, but it's an open model that you can download yourself that is accessible through OpenRouter. Super cheap. It's like 7 times cheaper than Claude 3.5 Haiku and basically as powerful as Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So definitely check that out through OpenRouter. Let's see. Will you post this live stream as a video to rewatch? Yeah, so live streams are automatically rewatchable. So you just have to go to the live section of my channel. And then also I'm probably going to be posting some sort of concise version of this live stream just because I want people to be able to follow through this mini series of building an AI agent without having to watch a 2-hour live stream. I mean, it's been a blast doing this with you all. But for someone just wanting to quickly digest this series, I think it makes sense to build the agent as a part of a concise video as well. So that's probably coming early next month as well. Is it legal to host n8n, to self-host n8n within a business? So you're allowed to use n8n for free without paying unless you are commercializing it. So I think as long as you're using it internally, it's fine because that's technically not commercializing it. But if you are creating a user-facing interface that is using n8n workflows, then you would have to buy their commercial license, which is still way cheaper than most things. Like if you're using n8 or make.com or Zapier or something, it's still way cheaper, but you do have to pay for that. So that's something important to keep in mind. I believe that's how their licensing works. Do I prefer Cursor or Windsurf and why? So yeah, this is a debate of the century for sure. And honestly, I haven't tried Cursor too much recently. Like even after their like Cursor Compose features and stuff. So I wouldn't say my opinion is like the most trustable for this, but in general, I do prefer Windsurf because of how well it works agentically as an AI pair programmer. Like the way that it's able to take my question and actually understand like which files to look at and change and what information to give back to me to like describe what it did. I find that to be a lot more powerful. But Cursor is also open source, while Windsurf is not, and so that's definitely a huge plus for Cursor overall. So that's what I would say. Is 5.4 better than 0.1? I don't think that 5.4 is better than 0.1. 0.1 is an insanely powerful closed source reasoning model. 5.4 is open source, which is cool. Don't think it's better than 0.1 though. Can you run the Hugging Face inference API with the n8n AI agent? I tried, but okay. I'm not sure if there is an integration. Let me check that quick. We'll go back to the agent and see if we can replace. Like I'll delete this connection here and see if there's Hugging Face. There is not. You know, I think the problem is the Hugging Face inference API doesn't support tool calling. At least not entirely. I've tried to use Hugging Face within my LangChain chat agents, and it doesn't work with tool calling right, which I think is why it's not one of the options here for the AI agent node in n8n. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I think they're working on it. Like I heard that it was like an in-progress feature, but that was a while ago, so not entirely sure where they're at with that. Let's see. Front-end suggestions for a chat agent for a client. Yeah, so I kind of covered this in a recent question already, but I definitely recommend using an AI coding assistant like Bolt or Lovable to create like a React front-end. Super easy to build these without even that much of a technical understanding, and you can deploy them super easily. And then also Streamlit is a really awesome Python UI library that you can also use an AI coding assistant like Windsurf or Cursor to build really easily. So those would be my two main recommendations. So yeah, let me see what else we got here. Where can I get your Reddit business research n8n workflow template? So yeah, if you go to studio.ottomator.ai and find the business idea researcher agent, you can click on view source, and then boom, it takes you right to the open source repo where you can download the workflow JSON for this guy and then import it right into your n8n instance. So yeah, super easy and accessible. That's the goal of open source after all. Cam said, what up, bro? Another super helpful video. Keep it up. Can't wait to see what you build in 2025. Thank you, Cam. I appreciate it, my man. Oh, I think I missed a question. It's really hard to scroll through the YouTube comments within my streaming window here. Do I think AI is over the wall or down the wave? I assume you're asking like, are we still going to be moving fast going into next year, or are things going to slow down? And my answer is things are not going to slow down. Not at all. There's way too much that's happening with reasoning LLMs and AI agents and local AI, and just the fact that like there's so much that has been laid as the groundwork in 2024 going into this year. There's going to be incredible things coming out like continuously, just like there has been this year. Yeah, not slowing down. All right. Does the Live Agent Studio accept more parameters besides success or failure? So that's just for the output. When you output the result of your workflow, basically responding to the API request, you just say if it's true or false for the success. But for whatever you want to have the AI output, you just insert those as messages in the database. You can do whatever you want. So yeah, definitely check out the developer guide that I have right here on the Live Agent Studio that covers everything for how you can have the AI respond in the database and stuff for everything that it's doing and its final response as well. So yeah, anything that you want to output, you can definitely do that just through the database instead of the API response. Timer said it kind of worked. I used it. I assume you're talking about the GitHub agent. And the fact that it kind of worked is, I mean, that's all I'm looking for right now because it is just a prototype. It's not always going to answer every question, right? Maybe it'll like, and it'll look at the file structure and try to answer a question just with that instead of looking at specific files like the README. I've seen that happen before with this prototype as I'm testing it out, but like overall, it's a good prototype. So yeah. Digital Alchemist, good morning, by the way. It's nice to have a free moment for a change. Glad that you have a free moment. Sometimes life can be crazy. I am with you, man. All right. All right. Let me keep scrolling. I do not have paid Gemini. I'm just using the free one right now, actually. The issue I'm facing in n8n, my agent is hallucinating when I have too many messages stored in the memory. That's interesting. One thing you can do to adjust it is you can change the context window size. So this is the window buffer memory. And then if I go into my Postgres chat memory in my Live Agent Studio agent, I can change the context window length right here, which actually the fact that this is only at 1 is kind of concerning. I should probably up this. But this is how many past interactions the model will receive as context. So if this number is too low, it's going to forget prior messages, and that's probably why you're seeing hallucinations. So if you up this to like 20 or something, that's when you're going to actually have it remember everything in the conversation, which will definitely prevent hallucinations. So yeah, what are the times for this mini series? I don't have that established yet, but I'm basically going to be doing it for the month of January. So probably either like all of my Sunday videos or all of my Wednesday videos are going to be on this mini series. All right, great stream. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm going to answer a couple more questions and then I'm going to call it here because I'm definitely starting to lose my voice. Like, whew, it has been over 2 hours of talking. So yeah, a couple more questions here. How can I contact you? I want to give you my AI. Well, I would just say, if you want to give me your AI to put up on the Live Agent Studio, just go to the Submit Agent page here on studio.ottomator.ai. Because you can just submit with this form, and then boom, there you go. That is what I would say. Let's see. Front end UI for a client agent. Kind of already answered that with a couple of questions. How did you make the thinking indicator? I assume you're talking about the one on the Live Agent Studio when it answers a question. I mean, I just did that with a custom React component. This entire website, by the way, is built with Next.js. That's how I built the Live Agent Studio for those of you who are curious. Please suggest some other AI influencers that I think you should follow. That's a good question. So there's a lot that I could recommend. I would say Matthew Berman is a really good YouTuber that covers a lot of like AI news in general. And so as you're trying to just like keep up with everything going on, he's someone I'd recommend. It's not like you're going to get super technical tutorials with him like you would with me and some other YouTubers, but he's a good guy with news in general. And then also, since we're on the topic of n8n and we're building all of these n8n workflows, Zubair over at AI Workshop, he is a phenomenal YouTuber doing cool stuff with n8n. And then also Nate. Nate has a channel doing a ton of awesome stuff with n8n as well. So those are the guys I'd recommend, kind of just in topic right here is what we're doing with n8n. There's not a lot of YouTubers I know that get super technical with actually like building AI agents within custom code, like using Pydantic AI and things like that. I will say the LangChain YouTube channel is a really good resource if you want to get more technical with some of the more complex architectures and stuff with AI agents. So definitely check out the LangChain YouTube channel. I think that's what the biggest thing I'd recommend if you want to also get more technical. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Oh, I gotta delay the ads again. I've been delaying the ads like as much as I possibly can. So I hope that there hasn't been too many ads for you guys. Let's see here. Do you recommend the Asus board you use if you're building your AI rig today, or would you choose something else? Yeah, so I honestly am forgetting exactly which Asus motherboard I'm using. Asus Creator Pro, I think. Or no, that was the old one I got. Hold on, one moment. Let me pull this up for you because I have it on PC Part Picker. Is this the right one? Motherboard? No. Hold on. I might have to circle back to this one. Oh, I'm not logged in. That's why. Okay, let me log in quick. So I'm signing into PC Part Picker, by the way, on my other monitor. But yeah, I'd love to share quickly what motherboard I have. Where's my part list? Save part lists. There we go. Okay. All right, here we go. So this is my computer build. For those of you who are curious, I did get 2 used 3090s. So I didn't actually pay $1,400 for each of my GPUs, but this is the build that I have. And the motherboard is the X670 Creator. And I love it. I mean, this motherboard has been working fantastic. My GPUs are working well. I will say, I think Asus is putting out some new versions of this motherboard. So you might want to wait, and they might actually already be out. So this could already be a slightly outdated motherboard, but aside from that, it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, this is my full build right here. It all fits without even having to scroll. So if you're curious what I'm using for my AI setup, this is it. And it's definitely more pricey, but it was a very worthy investment for me because AI is my life. My channel is my life. Everything I do for the Live Agent Studio and with my platform Automator, that is my life. And so it's definitely a worthy investment because I do a ton of stuff with local AI, and it's only going to be more and more going into 2025. So that is my setup right here that I've got for my AI rig. Can I do a deep dive video on n8n, Supabase, and Postgres? I mean, honestly, like what I'm doing with this series is pretty much a deep dive, and I'll be putting out a lot more content on n8n and Supabase, of course, going into it, and then obviously Postgres as well, since that's what Supabase uses under the hood. Yeah. Okay, I think that is good for now. Yeah, I've pretty much gotten to the end of the questions, and I'm totally losing my voice. So I think I'm going to call it here. So yeah, I appreciate all of you guys being a part of this live stream, building a prototype of an n8n agent for this mini series that I am doing. The last thing that I'll do is plug the link to register for the hackathon again. Definitely come be a part of this competition and build some awesome AI agents, following a lot of what I actually did in this live stream. Like we actually built an agent together and then turned it into one compatible with the Live Agent Studio using this template that I have in that open source repository. So super exciting stuff. A lot more coming for this mini series soon. And also stay tuned for the super exciting video that I've got on the 1st. So the 1st of January at 7 o'clock Central Time, my usual posting time, just happens to fall on the 1st, which is perfect because it is a video specifically about AI going into 2025. So you don't want to miss it. And probably a lot more live streams coming in the future as well. Not probably, definitely, because I had a blast with this. Yeah, and I mean, I liked how casual this one was as well, especially compared to the other one that I did for all the bolt.diy announcements. That was a fun live stream as well. Definitely not as casual though. So it was fun just to be sipping on my coffee, which I never actually finished on this stream. But yeah, I got my cool n8n mug. So it's just fun to have that. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching. And I will see you in my next video on the